All right, buddy, aka Mark Moen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Are we actually filming right now? Wait. That's been filming for forever. Oh, it's
The camera's never off.
Yeah. Yeah. My name is Mark, aka Buddy. Known this guy for a minute now. Too long. Yeah. Since about middle school. Very good friends with you, and then I know Ethan too. I actually kind of brought you guys together. So
you did actually. You were the mutual friend.
I was, right. So if you guys really do make it big, I do feel like
we owe everything to you, buddy.
Listen, I'm not going to be upset if I don't get anything, but subconsciously, I probably am expecting like $5,000, something around that lines.
No. You should just go for a percentage. Just go for a percentage. That way, you just get more if they succeed more. If you go for $5,000, if they succeed big, that's nothing.
That's true. Cameron,
you get free stickers for life.
I'll take that. All right, let's do it.
Okay.
So you guys started the podcast a while ago, and I'm actually really proud of like all the work and effort you kind of put into making it legitimate, because I feel like everyone kind of has like a friend, that's like, oh man, I want to start a podcast. And then like it sucks, or like they'll film like an episode or two and they'll kind of give up. But you've really made it kind of professional and gotten like a groove going. So yeah, super cool and happy to be on here and get to it. I also know Robbie too, and Ryan. So yeah, I'm not just only knowing Cameron here.
Cool. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Ryan Paultine. Friend of Buddy's, friend of Ethan's, and a very avid watcher of the podcast. Make sure to comment every single video. I guess I'm just a humongous geek, Pretty much.
Cool. Ethan, actually, since he's not on this episode, he has some questions for you, Ryan, specifically. I do have some questions for you as well, so we'll get to everyone. So Ethan's first question was, what are your career dreams? What do you see yourself doing as a career? So
I wanted to become a game developer because I've always played games as a kid, and I want to do something that involves creating things. So I hope to start off working for a company and then eventually go independent as time goes on. But first, the first steps are to go to college and take classes. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I really admire that. It seems like it's a hard but really rewarding road.
Yeah. A lot of them get overworked. A lot of times, like if you plan to be a game developer, you probably going to be expected to work overtime most of the time.
Interesting. I don't know that.
There's a ton of like overturn and like people jumping from companies to companies, which it's kind of sad, but at the same time, there's some games that they get like the right combination of people and they just like trying to be like masterpieces because everyone's like super passionate and super cool.
Well, are you gonna work
I imagine it's a little bit like film
for a sellout company like EA and just like screw over all of your fans?
I've heard horror stories of people who work for EA. That's probably a company I'd try to avoid. I know that no matter what company I would go to work for, I'm probably not gonna get. I'm gonna get the short end of the stick in some kind of way. But
So when you say you want to be game developer, you want to be on the programming side, artistic side?
I want to be more on the artistic side. Okay. Yeah, because I wouldn't mind being on the programming side, but I want to be more of like I want more control over how the game comes out.
Yeah.
Right. So you'd be more of like a creative director. Like,
yes.
This is how the combat system is going to work, and like this is the type of environment that we're trying to make, and that'd be cool.
I feel like we've talked this before, but like what kind of made you want to go down that? Because I know like Alex also does kind of that. He's like, his brother-in-law basically. Was that an inspiration on you, or?
Well, yeah. Well, when I was a kid, when I moved, I didn't have a lot of friends in the beginning, and I made some friends by playing games, by inviting them over and hanging out. And I guess, I think there's a lot of negative views against games for some of the older generation, but I don't really think that's right. I don't know. I just want to create them. It was a source of happiness for me. I hope to make it a source of happiness for others. That's why I wanted to become a game developer.
That's cool. Yeah. I would say like games, they're interesting medium because they're not like most other like narrative mediums. Like they connect with players on like a different level than like movies and shows and books, and like they can't like reach that level. And like there's certain like narrative devices that you can do just because it is an interactive medium that like you can't do anywhere else.
Yeah, I think it's funny you bring that up because ironically, it's most game developers don't even realize that they're using a completely different medium. It seems like they think they're making a movie most of the time. They're making a movie and then you get to be a part of the movie. But no, it's like you are the creator. Like in a game, you are the creator. You're the source of creation, and you're given a set of rules by which to create. But I mean, really, you are the source of, I guess, dynamics. Or you are the thing that's driving the game, not the game itself. Which is, it's completely unique to all other art forms.
Cool.
I feel like you're going to do like a lot of microtransactions in your games, Ryan, and just try to like suck as much money out of people as you
I'm
can.
more of a DLC kind of guy.
Okay. I see.
So I have actually my brother, who is also aspiring to be a game developer. He gave a really interesting idea for how to release a game. And so what you want to do is you want to release the basic game, and you maybe sell it as like I don't know, $10, let's say, for this game. And then as you continue to make DLC for it, you just add it to the game and the price goes up. But the people who bought the game originally get the DLC for free. And so you kind of have like a reward system for original customers. I thought that was a really genius idea, and to a reward and basically to demonstrate how great of a company you are, like to produce loyalty, customer loyalty.
Well,
I think that's a really good idea.
I think Borderlands 2 did something kind of like that, where they had DLC released to continue their to like advertise for the new game, but they only made it free for people who first got it, who were like on top of it, who knew about it, and then afterwards, now it costs money to play it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I actually have a similar question for you guys. What do you think of loot boxes and DLC in video games? Like, don't like? Is it necessary, or should it just be banned altogether?
I think it depends on the kind of game. Like, I think DLC can be great because a lot of times you want to return to the world. As long as like that game is already complete in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with having DLC for that. As for loot boxes, I think it depends on the kind of games. Sometimes loot boxes, great. But other games, they should just stay out of,
It seems to me that the greatest question is pay to win or not pay to win. And I really think pay to win is like immoral if you're making a game, because it is basically, it's giving an extrinsic power. Like you're not actually within the game. So people who are actually really bad at the game might still be able to succeed. And I think that's defeating the whole purpose of the game.
It's just a bad principle.
Yeah, it's just a bad principle. But DLC, I think, is probably a better idea than sequels.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people make sequels. They spend so much money coming up with a new engine for basically the same game, instead of just using the other engine, which really worked, and adapting that engine. The greatest example I can think of DLC as opposed to a sequel is kind of Majora's Mask in Legend of Zelda. I don't know if you've ever played Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
On the Nintendo 64. It's a great example of, it's a sequel. It's like a new story. It's a completely different game. But at the same time, it reuses a lot of the old data, the same engine. It's basically the same engine, just a new game, a new experience. And I think that's really, it worked really well for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I feel like from like a company's perspective on it, and like a broader like economic standpoint view of things, I understand why they exist, because obviously a business exists to make money, and clearly they're making a lot of money off it. And if people are going to keep buying them, why not put it out there? But I do think it sucks, obviously, as people that play video games, like for the reason you're saying, pay to win. It kind of takes out like the enjoyment of the game for people that really want to. But there's still like great single player games that are coming out with. I mean, if anything, I feel like it's caused people to put more of an emphasis back on single player games that were being ignored for a while. So
that's what the stats show. I think it was for 2020. There's a company that did stats for their game specifically. I don't remember which company it was. But basically they looked at like the number of multiplayer games versus single player games that people were playing. And it was like overwhelmingly like single player, like almost exclusive for that like company.
I
that's
remember
sad.
that because EA right around the same time had just released a statement saying that like single player games were dead, and then the stats just showed that that was not the case, and everyone gave them flack for it.
That's honestly okay. That's funny, and I get that. But at the same time, it's sad to me that couch multiplayer is dying. Do you guys remember growing up and going
like Halo.
Yeah, Halo,
Yeah,
Super
so
Smash Brothers, these couch games. I love couch multiplayer games. I think it's an experience that is far above and beyond all the other gaming experiences because having a headset and playing with other guys is not the same as being in the same room. And like that's an actual bonding experience. And I think everything else is much more artificial and probably more wasteful than a couch multiplayer experience.
I was very disappointed in Halo 5 because I got
Join the
it.
club.
And I was like,
Join the world.
because my brother and I, we used to play this all the time, all the Halo games. So I invited him over to try to play, and no, it wouldn't. And I was like, why isn't it? And then I looked it up. No, there was no split screen for it. I was like,
Wait, there's no split screen for a
Halo
Halo
5.
game?
No.
That's like no jumping in a Mario game.
Right.
Don't give them any ideas.
Like what you were kind of talking about, like it sort of gave you an opportunity to make friends, you know, and actually get to like meet people to come over and hang out with you. And I think people kind of forget that aspect
Yeah.
of it. It is a social. It's like a bonding
Yeah.
experience with your friends. You can do something you enjoy doing together, and when you take that out, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, what is this? It's not.
What
as
is
much-
the point?
Right.
What is the point? And so when it comes down to it, the single player games that succeed for their story, succeed for their meaning, and are more of a work of art, I would say. But the multiplayer games that succeed, or the multiplayer games that should succeed, in my opinion, are the ones that, like you say, are a bonding experience. Just like playing chess or playing other board games. I mean, it's the same principle. It's a game. A game is a game is a game. And and yeah, I think it's really sad that we're kind of, I guess, disconnecting. That's symptomatic of our entire situation, but you know
what we did when we first moved into like our apartment together, and like we didn't have like very many like, because they didn't have a lot of single player games. We just got Yahtzee. We just played Yahtzee
I
late
hate
at
that
night.
game. It's like
It's
mostly
all
chance.
luck, bro. Yeah,
it's all
luck.
chance.
Yeah.
It's all chance. It's basically Risk, but without the strategy.
Right, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look up like good like co-op local co-op multiplayer games, there's only like a handful of good ones. It's like Halo, and you've got like Cuphead, and there's like the one where it's like the Two Brothers, which I think was a PlayStation exclusive, and then there's like a few others, but there's really not that many, which is kind of sad.
We just, my brother and I recently discovered one called Outward. It is, because we are such big fans of Dark Souls and the Soul series, it's like similar principles to Dark Souls, but also it's an open world Skyrim-esque kind of game, and it's local co-op, split screen. It is the most interesting thing.
I played that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It is. It's pretty cool. It's a little bit cartoonish. It makes me feel like I'm in an Indiana Jones game a little bit. Like it just feels. It feels different. It feels different. But I think it's really good. And I highly suggest it to anybody who wants to do any kind of co-op play.
Do you know of any good ones, Ryan?
Well, I mean, pretty much any Nintendo game is obviously a great
Yeah.
split screen experience. There are a few games that I've played that are not necessarily designed for split screen, but you could, like Detroit Become Human, meant to be a single player game, but you can play it as in every other character could be a friend of yours, so you pass over the controller to the other person to play that character.
Interesting.
That's a good idea, actually.
Until
That
Dawn,
is.
I want to do a party game with that because it's a horror game and it's
say,
very
I have that
campy.
Yeah.
But you could make every character a friend of yours, and
Yeah.
I think that would be a really fun thing.
Cool. Yeah, we should do that. I have Until Dawn. I just haven't like played a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what you can do is, if you guys are a PC gamer, you could definitely not, I repeat, not
masturbate.
emulate a different system and play
May or
Super
may not be illegal.
may or may not be illegal. Definitely do not emulate a GameCube and just play Super Smash Brothers Melee.
Nintendo holds onto their properties. Like every system and every game is like a gold jewel, like something like precious to them.
It's like they're losing their children or something.
Yeah, it's like they keep re-releasing these like super old games for like basically retail price.
Yeah.
But they do it in a way where like you have to. It's ridiculous.
And so Nintendo also isn't, for example, GameCube. They're not making any more GameCubes. They're not making any more controllers for their GameCubes. So they're just basically turning it into a valuable commodity of even having some of these old systems, any of these old games. It's like, if you don't have it, well, sucks to suck. Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Yes.
Question for you. What are do you have like a favorite MMA fighter or fighters?
It's a good question. Yeah, I feel like I am not so much of a fan of just pure skill. I like people that kind of have like a story behind them too. They'll go out there and like show like a lot of heart. So there was a big fight. Everyone knows like Conor McGregor. The guy he just lost to, Ryan and I watched it together. This guy named his name is Dustin Poirier. And he has like this really just kind of cool backstory of like coming up like in Louisiana, and like he had like a really hard life, and MMA kind of gave him like an opportunity to channel like a lot of that in kind of a direction away from like crime and kind of poverty. And he like fought his way up, and then he fought Conor for the first time back in like 2014, got schooled, just got like knocked out. And there's like this really just sad, like iconic like picture of him, and you see him just like laying there, like knocked out. And you see Conor like doing his like weird swag walk thing, you know? And and like at the time you just know like Dustin's thinking in his head, like, this guy's gonna go off to superstardom and I just lost and my career is over with. But he didn't give up. He went and trained harder and really like honed his skill set. And he got a lot better, whereas Conor kind of just, you know, teetered out and did, you know,
kind of
rich guy antics. Yeah, punched old people in the head for not liking his whiskey. And they rematched again, and Dustin pieced him up and won. I think that's like a really cool backstory.
Nice.
I also like John Jones just because he's like, he's such like a not good guy. And he keeps like this like image of himself as being like this saint. And it's really annoying when he does that, because he's clearly not. Like, he hit a pregnant woman with his car and ran away. He's just not. But what he does, just own the fact that he's just a jerk. And he's like, what are you going to do about it? I'm the best fighter in the world. He makes a really good heel, and he's still undefeated. So I do like just watching him just go out there and just be a jerk when he just lets it out. So those two probably.
Nice. Do you guys watch any MMA or WWE or
The only time I watch MMA
Muay Thai?
is when with Buddy, pretty much.
I would like to watch John Cena fight Conor McGregor.
What's your? Oh,
That'd be a good
sorry,
one.
wrong dude.
Yeah. That would be my dream. No, I don't watch a lot of MMA. Neither do I watch wrestling. I mean, wrestling's actually not combat. But, I mean, it's a very interesting style of storytelling. You know, there's a lot of showmanship that goes on, which is pretty entertaining to watch in those small clips that I do see. But I don't know if there's any single fighter that I could name off the top of my head which I really admire or find like inspirational. I do find it interesting that that person is from Louisiana and has that background like driving him forward. I think that's pretty cool. And everybody loves an underdog story. So everybody, okay, I admire Conor McGregor's confidence. Like what I've seen, just he exudes confidence. He's just completely overconfident. That's probably his defining characteristic. It's just confidence. But I don't really think that's a great character trait. I don't necessarily think that's the best, and I would definitely respect someone who knows the limitations a lot more.
Yeah, at some point you're just like, yeah, you've got too much confidence, too much swagger, and it's not likable.
Well, it's really weird though, because like there is this thing with fighters that like people want them to be really humble and like have a good attitude about it. I don't want to say it's impossible, but I do think to an extent to like be that kind of person that goes into a cage and just fights something like that, you have to be kind of like deluded and like, you know, you really have to think like you're just the best thing ever and have no fear in you. If you're a normal, well-adjusted person, you know, who's going to be humble, you're probably not going to be going into that line of work to begin with and training like that. So I almost feel like the second someone, and you saw that with Conor this last time, he was like a lot more humble and he was like gracious and he was doing that trash talk and he lost and he got knocked out. And it's only when he was kind of being like super cocky Conor that he had that kind of like killer instinct to go in for it. So it's kind of like a weird like view into like the human psyche of how that kind of works. There's like a weird paradigm that goes on there.
That's a lot of what athletes do though, is they'll like, for most of like their training, they're like somewhat humble and like nice, but then, you know, when they're there to like compete, they almost like have to hype themselves up to the point where they're telling themselves like I'm the best, I'm gonna win this, like that like winner's mentality. And I don't know if that necessarily helps you or not. I would think that it would help you to a point.
Almost undoubtedly it does.
Until you're until you like are on the other side of it where you're like, well, I know that I'm the best, so I'm going to win. Like that is different from like I can like win this thing. Like being confident and being cocky are like two different things. And I think Connor probably went a little too far, like over the other side of that.
Well, someone once said like cockiness is based on like insecurity, confidence is based on skill. So I think if you have the skill to back it up and you know you can do it, then it's okay to play that mindset. But when it gets to the point where you're not looking at things as reality, they're kind of looking as like the image you've constructed in your head about like your image and the guy you're fighting, that's when you tend to see like people just self-destruct. So,
yeah.
It seems to me also that training kind of breeds an overconfidence, where if you train a lot, you'll have a lot of overconfidence, but experience brings true humility. Where if you're actually like, if you have those experiences where you've been, knocked out or just beaten, and that breeds, like, you can't help but be truly humbled by that, where it's like, you recognize that, even though I trained so hard, you're still not the best. Somebody's better than you. There's always somebody better than you. So, yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Ryan?
About, not really. The last two MMA fights I saw were kind of disappointing. Buddy, do you remember the Cowboy versus McGregor fight?
Yeah, it lasted like 30 seconds.
Yeah, just boom, boom, done. I was like, okay. And then, I think MMA is interesting in that, like, you could have a guy who totally deserves the win, but just completely fall flat and just lose.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. You don't really know what's going to happen.
We also kind of assume, I don't know, it's like that old Ecclesiastes, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Because with MMA, we kind of assume that, this fighter's the best, or this fighter's the best because of these qualities that they've exuded. And maybe that's right, but there's so much variation over time with the same fighter, even over an hour. Like, the variation of their capability, where one moment they will be extremely powerful, and the next moment, just because of their circumstances, because of their mental attitude, they'll be, not much more spectacular than your average. So there's a lot of variation, and I think training helps a lot, but training is just increasing your odds. It's not actually defining whether you're a better fighter, whether you'll win.
I just thought of that one match that you showed us the other day, where it was the two dudes that like got super tired like during the beginning of the round, and then like for the rest of the match, it's like they're like in slow motion.
Yeah, that's what happens with the heavyweights. That's why I think people like think that like heavyweight fighters are getting the most interesting fights.
No,
and they suck most of the time because they have like too much muscle to like do anything. It's the smaller guys.
With the what is it in wrestling? I did wrestling for 2 years, and that's exactly the case. I was in the awkward weight, not quite heavyweight, not quite middleweight. I was like 195, 182 was like my weight bracket area, and so it was just the worst. Wrestling with some guys who would just like hang on to you and just latch onto you, and they're so heavy they just drag you into the ground, or fighting the smaller guys who are just like super fast, and it's like there's no in between. There's just either fast or you're just a tank. There's nothing in between.
Was it because you have like a kind of a weird body type, because you're kind of like tall and like lengthy, right? But you're also like
it was not.
I was gonna say I don't feel like
you're more of like an endomorph.
No, my I've noticed. So I've practiced also some historic European martial arts, like sword fighting, things like that. That is where I have an advantage, because I have a really long reach and I have some pretty strong shoulders, which allows me to keep my sword up. But with wrestling, it's the stockier guys that have better leverage for their strength. And so like I am just one gigantic lever. My entire body, they have so much leverage because my bones are so long, and so they can just like leverage me into the ground.
Bro, do you fence?
I do.
Teach me how to fence sometimes. I'll fence with you, man. Yeah.
Well, you take the pliers, you wrap around the barbed wire, and then I can teach you some stuff.
That'd be kind of cool.
So you said you did European sword fighting?
I say it's a process. I'm learning. Like I'm still in the process right now.
So there's a school here in Spokane for that?
There is a school in Spokane. I don't go, but there is a school in Spokane. Remember, I live an hour away, guys. I'm not gonna go an hour like every week.
You're not dedicated enough.
I'm not dedicated enough, and also they do require money, and you have to have gear for almost every school that I know of, and so the only gear I have are some sparring swords, like 2 sparring rapiers, 1 sparring longsword, and a mask. That's all I got. And then some MMA equipment, which is useful for padding. Like it's nice to have something around your hands. But no, it is a lot of fun. I highly suggest it for a sport with a purpose, or like working out with a purpose, because I think a lot of people want to exercise, but they don't want to.
They're not training for something.
Yeah, they're not training for something. And so when you're doing MMA, or you're doing MMA is a good way of doing it. MMA is really destructive though. Like MMA is really destructive to your body, and so is other martial arts. Sword fighting is less destructive. Now, it can be destructive if you're stupid, if you get hit in the wrong places. But I just like come away from sword fighting mostly just with wraps on the knuckles and with some scrapes on my knees. Like that's all that happens with sword fighting, is like a couple pokes, a couple bruises, but none of this like huge wear and tear on your shins, and like none of this conditioning your bones until they become harder. You know, there's none of that craziness. It's pretty laid back, all things considered, and it's an art, which is not necessarily every martial art. Like not every martial art is an art per se.
I could see you being a crusader. Like
They use volts, guys.
I could just see you like
Parry this
crusading
casual.
I could see you being
Jerusalem's
what's that
attacking
character
people.
from Dark Souls? Soter. You could be Soter. Or
No.
I wish I could be so grossly incandescent.
Praise the sun.
Praise the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan, you know that was our school mascot. It was a crusader.
Oh really?
Really?
Yeah, we were the Northwest Christian
Yeah.
Crusaders.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Nowadays,
Yeah.
I can't wait until they are forced to change that mascot.
What will they
I don't
change
see
it?
how it could be a problem running around with a sword.
What will they change it to though? Like a priest? Like
Yeah, he's just
No,
like
that's even worse.
he's holding a Bible instead of a mace, and he's just like reading through it. And-
Yeah.
they're still in the same armor. They're just
yeah. He has like the Crusader garb and everything. He just like
There's a scholar.
They're gonna just change it to like the Inquisitor or something like that, and then people are gonna
No
get
one
really
expects the
upset.
Inquisitor.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Oh, actually, Northwest Christian, I didn't even realize that they had a mascot. For the longest time, I didn't see any of their, like, oh, we're the Crusaders or anything like that. Because all the other schools, I remember, like, wrestling some kids for Northwest Christian and competing in other sports against Northwest Christian, and I never saw their mascot.
They wouldn't have a mascot there for wrestling. It was mostly like volleyball and like the actual like, tournament-based sports like volleyball and basketball.
Wrestling's a tournament-based sport. It's just not fun to watch.
It's
That's
not
a
as cool.
difference.
Instead of sweaty dudes running around, it's just sweaty dudes on the floor.
my school's mascot was a crusader or something cool like that. Ours was just a Scotty, but they made him look buffed out to try to make it look cool. But I was like, not having it.
I have never seen our school's mascot. I know we had like a mascot, and our mascot was the Cougars, the Chihuahua Cougars, or Jenkins High School Cougars. I have never seen the suit. I've never seen the dude. Like, I've been to football games. I've looked for him. I can't find him anywhere, which makes me wonder why.
No one wanted to do it.
No one wanted to do it, I
Too
guess. I mean, there are like 3 kids in our school, so yes.
really fast. Do you remember Mrs. Spieler? I think she told me because her husband, I think he's the coach, Aaron Spieler over there, and I think there was a point in time where they actually wanted for the Northwest Christian mascot to have like, I think Mr. Spieler presented it, and it was like a crusader, and he literally had scalped like like some guy like to the Holy Land, and they're like,
Nice.
no, we're not doing that.
That's culturally accurate though.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of what they would do. But
Yeah, I feel like you can't have the Crusader without like doing the whole Masonic thing and
You could have like a kid with the Crusader garb on. That's like historically accurate. Right?
I guess you could.
Well, the Crusader,
Like a children's crusade?
Yes.
Getting sold into slavery? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that'd fly.
well, also, I mean, like with the Crusaders, I don't know. I am not historically informed.
Well, none of us really are.
No, I mean,
I actually did major in,
okay,
in medieval
buddy,
history. And
really?
yes,
okay,
a
so you
little
majored
bit.
in medieval history. So
I mean, not medieval. I
medieval
studied.
torture,
I majored in
yes.
history. I studied a lot of medieval.
Oh, okay, so what you studied? Actually, I think majoring in history is probably the best degree you can get, in my opinion. But
You don't make a lot of money.
no,
That's why I do accounting now. Yeah, that's the main reason.
But I mean, like, it's not a matter of making money. It's just a matter of if you actually are pursuing learning history is the most useful information you can have. That way you can prevent it from repeating itself. But with history, so with Crusader or Crusades, every crusade had a different reason behind it for the most part, right? And like not every crusade had the same reasoning. Not every crusade was necessarily as evil as the previous. And there's so much variation between the motivations and the players within the Crusades, because there was different countries, different leaders going on, different attacks going on, and different cities being sacked. Yep. So like with that, I mean, can we even like say, like, can we universally accuse the Crusaders or universally condone them? I feel like that's the fault which we're trying to make, is like we're trying to say all Crusades were evil or all Crusades were like good, you know, like both sides might be making that same mistake of just universal pardon or universal condemnation, but we can't do that. And also, I just don't think we have a whole lot of information on the subject.
No. Well, people like, so there was like 12 crusades. So some of them weren't even in the Middle East. They were like in the Baltics area around like Estonia kind of, and they were over a period of 200 years. So it wasn't just like things that were like right next to each other, you know. And like you were saying, the very first one was like multinational. It had a very specific purpose and it was largely successful. But then after that, they kind of became like secular kind of in motivation. I mean, they varied, but it would just be like largely a king would want to like assert his authority and be like, how do I legitimize myself? Oh, I'm going to conquer Jerusalem, you know. Yeah. That'll get the Pope on my side. And they'd head off there. You know, one of the Crusades, it didn't even... It took out the Byzantine Empire, which was the Christian Roman Empire.
The Byzantine?
Right. Yeah. You know, it didn't even get to any Muslims or anything. So
yes,
it was all over the place. But it's fascinating to look at it, like you're saying, and kind of like study and see how like, oh, it's weird how there are all these different factors and dynamics that played in this. It's very rarely just ever one thing like people think it is.
And it's also largely attributed to the Catholic Church, which became so tied up in the politics, like a church becoming tied up in the politics, where the politics was affecting the church and the church had political power, which seemed to, although people call the Catholic Church a monolith, we treat the Catholic Church like a monolith. There's so many sects and there's so many different schools of thought within the Catholic Church that's not very Catholic, that is to say, not very universal. So we really can't even look back and say, oh, it was the Catholic Church's fault, because at times, weren't there Catholics fighting Catholics in some of these crusades? I mean, there's all kinds of, so much chaos going on. Although I do recall, so the literacy rates, though, one of the reasons why we accused the Middle Ages of being the Dark Ages, I believe, was because of the literacy rates, but wasn't that largely a misnomer? Like, weren't we actually quite mistaken about how literate the people were?
Yeah, I think that was mostly sort of a Western mindset. I think it's because there weren't that many like sources around at the time, so a lot of it is undocumented. People forget that the same sources that exist during antiquity, they were still around. They just transferred from the Romans to like the Greeks or the Arabs in that period of time. So like the Eastern Orthodox Church, they still were recording everything. They had a lot of different... and they were separate from the Catholics. So it's interesting to see like their perspective on Holy War and things like that, as opposed to the Catholics. Yeah. And same with like the more kind of political, secular Islamic world that was further, they were also recording a lot of stuff. Ryan actually has interesting perspectives on this because his family is from Arabia and his ancestors were actually, as you can tell by his skin complexion over here.
He's making.
It's okay, Ryan. This is a safe space. You don't have to hide anymore.
Well, I'm told that I have ancestors from the Habsburg Empire, which were a bunch of inbred and incestuous tyrants. So I don't believe that.
I was going to say, isn't that like most rulers from like most of the world?
Yeah.
At least most of like the European world, at least back in those times.
Yeah. I mean, apparently though, so here's one thing. So in 1 Corinthians 5, it talks about the one dude in the Corinthian church who was incestuous, like he slept with his father's wife, and it describes, or Paul's talking about, and he says it's not even named among the Gentiles. And I thought that was weird to say, but I was looking at it, and it is. Like, it's literally uncommon. That's uncommon among the Greeks and the Romans and everything. The Greeks literally have plays, lots of plays about how bad incest is. Like, they have way too many plays.
Like Oedipus Rex.
Oedipus. You have Oedipus Rex. You have all kinds of plays by Ovid's Metamorphoses. You have all these plays and stories where it's like, they universally hated it. And somehow, you guys did it. It's messed up. It's really, it's uncommon. It's uncommon even among the people who were like practicing temple prostitution and like child infanticide and all these things, which were other evils. But like that one thing, I don't know. I guess it's one of those times where they can just point at something and just say, oh, that's so evil, we'd never do that. And that's what makes us good enough to allow us to do this evil, you know?
Right. And that's why they had so many like defects, health problems. You had all those like different diseases. Some of them were hereditary and some of them were just viral. And there was a lot of stuff back then. And it wasn't like, it wasn't like it was something that happened to the people. It was like the people that caused those problems.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that that video online? It's like what was actually the worst year in history, and it was like yeah, I think you've seen it, right? And people, because everyone's like, oh, 2020 is the worst year, and it was actually like during the reign of Justinian in like 5 something. Like there was the big like plague of Justinian going around, just like killing everyone, and the sky was red because of some like weird natural thing. It was just terrible. Like everything sucked, and I'm like, oh, I'm really happy.
I was gonna say, was that a weird history video?
It might have been, yeah. It was like about like what year had just had the worst stuff that ever happened, and it was like 20. It was like 542 AD or something like that. I just remember it was during Justinian's reign, but it was pretty bad.
Have you guys ever heard of a series of books by Gibbon? This writer Gibbon, called The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire.
It created the like basically how you source and do everything with one. Yeah.
It's a classic work. It's almost like the Rosetta Stone, I thought, of history for a while. It's frequently referenced. It's extremely it's enduring. It's an enduring work. But I haven't read it personally myself. I read bits and pieces. There's quotes which are used often, like the one about how there's describing history as a catalog of the crimes, follies, and misfortunes of mankind. Like that specific quote is from Gibbon. And in that book, though, he describes how the Praetorian Guard became the rulers of Rome, how they were the ones who replaced and put in place emperors, which was to me very interesting. And often what they would have is they would have a good emperor, which they would put in place. But once he started doing the things which had to be done, like basically cutting back on spending, like just instituting some of these laws, and as soon as they'd stopped liking him. And so they'd kill the emperor, which was trying to fix the situation. Or like Stilicho, who is one of the generals who was preserving the Roman Empire towards its fall. This was back in the West and East, where it actually still separated, but they're united at the same time. Stilicho, this general who was keeping everybody in order, like he was basically keeping it all together. He was the glue keeping it all together. And he was keeping the Goths and the Visigoths, or maybe just the Visigoths, from invading. Like he was keeping them from sacking Rome. They liked him, and so they didn't want to destroy him. And he was keeping it all together until an emperor thought he was too much of a threat, and so he executed him. And then it stopped coming together. It's like these empires are self-destructive, and that's like the one universal trait of all human society, is that it's self-destructive. It's not really anything coming from outside. Those threats are just the final destruction. They are not the true destruction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, mankind has always been self-destructive in one way or another.
Just like John Jones, the MMA fighter who self-destructed his own life. Yeah. So, to tie back to the...
I just looked back at the question.
I was looking at this question. I was like,
wow. I don't think society has to remain destructive, though. Like, I feel like we'll move away from that as time goes on.
Really?
Yeah, I'm more of an optimist, so...
That's good, because I'm a pessimist.
Well,
balance out the table.
I just think that philosophically, that's just not supportable, because you've got, I guess you have the scientific rule, or the scientific law of entropy, where and order tends towards disorder. And so I think humankind is going downhill. We have a lot of these artifices, all these technologies and these conveniences which we've created as we are declining. But the universal trend is going down. Our life expectancy is actually getting smaller, even though we've created these better healthcare systems.
It's because of processed foods.
Yeah. It's because of GMOs, guys. Only eat food that doesn't cast a shadow.
That's the idea that order can also come out of disorder, though.
Interesting. I think that's part of the evolutionary myth. The myth that order tends towards, disorder tends towards order, because we see, or that the evolutionist looks at the acorn that grows into the oak and says, I've solved it. That, I know how the world works. I know that this little thing, which is so simple, became something greater and more complex and more fruitful. But he doesn't see that acorn came from another oak. And so we have a cycle, and I think the Taoists believe that everything is balanced in a cycle, and it's like, the right and wrong are just the dualists. The Taoists believe that you have the circle of life, and many people believe that. And I think that's probably the best way of looking at current reality. But the cycle eventually will break down. Like the wheel on the bus goes round and round until it doesn't.
I think like from a technological like standpoint, kind of I guess more or less what you're saying. Yeah, I could see how like in terms of like countries more making like agreements not to fight and sort of globalism spreading, things could get better from that perspective. But I think like from a internal kind of more like the soul of the person, like that kind of thing, and like actual human problems and disorder and chaos, or just even like everyday killings, I think we're kind of going towards the same trajectory mankind's always sort of been on. And I think the kind of peace that you will see arising, it's not going to become like a peace from like sort of like friendship or like genuine like altruism. It's more going to be like, it would not benefit me economically to attack you or kill this person.
This peace from fear,
right?
Peace from selfishness,
right? Yeah. It's exactly. So I kind of think that I could see sort of what both of you are saying, but it's not like an actual like improvement of the human condition. It's more like
consolidation is not necessarily improvement.
I think the human condition has a possibility to improve, which.
Well, I think, it's also kind of a worldview where you're looking at it from too.
True.
That's ultimately going to kind of change.
And there's like different, depending on like what sector or like what area of life you look at it, I feel like you could have different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Like if you're talking about like the human condition or like living conditions, I think it does have the possibility to improve, but probably not likely. I don't know. I mean, if you look at like the internet, as like a construct, like that was something that was, basically created in disorder. And I feel like, in the future we could, especially with more like companies, that have more oversight, I think there could be more order in the future. Mm-hmm. But as far as like general human life, I don't know.
So we look at the complex things which we've created, computers, the internet, and those things are really incredible. They're genius things, but they came from what is vastly more complex, what is vastly more ununderstandable, which is our brain, like our mind. Like the mind of a man is far more complex, although we don't use it very well. But it is vastly more complex than what we can even model. Like we don't understand ourselves completely. Even the brain of a bee is more effective than a Cray computer. So, I mean, that level of complexity found within nature, although we're replicating it, and I think we're replicating it decently, like we're trying, and we're replicating it to the point of practicality, that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, the human condition is improving. So I'm actually interested to know, like, what is your philosophical standpoint? Like, what do you see the human condition as being? Like, what is the human condition?
You're going to be opening up a whole can of worms here.
You know the conversations that
listen. This is I've had hours at work talking about these kinds of things before, and I'm telling you right now, we're not on track for any sort of productive.
3 hours later.
Yes.
Buddy and I will have conversations like this that literally last like 8 hours.
An entire shift. Yes.
That's impressive.
That is pretty cool. I just want to make sure, because when we say the human condition is improving, we have to make sure we all agree on the same idea of what is improvement in the human condition.
So Ryan does not have like a Christian standpoint, like his view on things.
That's fine.
And so I think kind of from that perspective, I would say pretty much like whatever you think or I think, he would be like just the opposite of that. Okay. So, I
think that's valuable.
Okay. So that's totally fine. I'm not going to argue against that. Although actually I would love to. If we want to talk theology, I would love to evangelize if I can. But I do want to know, like, if we do have to agree on the same standpoint if we want to have any kind of, like, if we want to understand what we are talking about, we have
the terminology.
Yeah, we have to understand the terminology, and we both have to agree on an absolute truth. Like, there has to be. If there is no absolute truth if we don't agree on that, there is absolute truth and there is absolute, improvement. Like, there is such a thing as improvement. to have an improvement, you kind of have to have a goal and you kind of have to have a starting point. So we have to agree that where we were was less desirable and less good from an absolute standpoint. And then where we're going, where we're progressing to is more desirable and is more good.
What I think right now we've definitely improved from before.
Oh yeah.
Now I think we're in a point where like paths can diverge. Like we might end up getting worse. But I think we could also improve if we make the right decisions.
And when you say we, do you mean like we universally as mankind?
Yes.
Okay. So so if you say improve, I'm guessing do you mean we're talking like moral improvements, or
Well,
just
in multiple different ways, like moral, technological.
technological? So more
living
more
conditions.
convenience, more health, more happiness.
Yes.
More happiness.
We're
I
getting
think-
away from loot boxes and away from all that sort of thing, and more into better
Yeah.
future.
I
Yeah.
think luxury lets us afford to look more into ourselves than
Yeah.
like before, where we had to just fight for survival and not think about it too much, which I think can be a good thing.
I think luxury is well, interesting. So the word luxury is actually the same word as lust, which is interesting. I don't know why I bring that up. The word luxury, the original Latin.
Is that true?
Yeah, luxury.
I gotta fact check that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to look it up, it's the same origin. The same origin of the same Latin word is used for both. Basically, there's the sin of luxury, which is lust. Just interesting thing thrown out there. I'm not saying you're using that wrong, but so luxury. I do think that there is luxury is. I don't want it to go away from my life, but I don't necessarily find any improvement in. If we're talking historically, we've gotten better at doing evil. Like the humankind in the 19th century has killed more people than we ever could have in the previous, however.
But
many.
there's been more people.
That's
So,
true.
of course.
That's a really good point. That is an excellent point. There has been more people. There is, though, I guess there is a general trend towards more evil men, I find. I guess not more cruel men, definitely more sadistic men. The very invention of the serial killer was something which we didn't have until, well, the 19th century. The serial killer.
Are we sure about that? I mean, we've just been documenting it. We don't know. There could be people who are very much like serial killers even farther back.
Well, there's one story I was reading about a German serial killer who was a highway robber who, I don't remember how many people he was responsible for killing. But he was, I think, according to mythology, like the first serial killer. But that's not quite like what I'm discussing. That's not
The
quite.
term though serial killer wasn't invented until like the 70s.
Yeah, yeah. So like the very idea of a serial killer, although we nowadays love categorizing so much that with the term of, for example, the term of a bastard sword wasn't invented until recently either, because people used to just call things the word which they had, which is like, oh, that's a sword. That's a killer. He's a murderer.
I do think like the concept existed though of like people. I don't think like I guess this is kind of best what we're saying. I think people's actions and kind of like the outside effects change. And so from that perspective, they can slowly improve or get worse.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the internal condition of the heart of where people ultimately lie, what they would do if they could, or, if things were exposed.
Yeah.
And biblically speaking, that's, when things come to light, that's what we talk about. I always think that has always sort of been the same kind of like what you're talking, like people have always had like selfish and evil desires. And there's been times in life where it's more culturally acceptable to repress those and don't bring them to light. Right now, we're kind of in a state where it's like, you can just go pretty much do whatever you want. And, we shouldn't. But and that's happened in the past too, like Rome at different periods.
As long as you're
I'm
not
just
breaking
saying
the law,
that
then it's
because
fine.
now
Right.
we don't have to struggle to survive. We can internally look into ourselves more than we could have back then.
This is
That's true.
This brings up
I'm just go ahead.
an interesting point, because like during COVID, one of the things that I had so much free time, I didn't have to worry about like work or anything. I did like a lot of introspection, just kind of thinking. It was probably one of the most like just unhappy periods of my life.
Yeah.
So is that necessarily is the elimination of all like strife in life, through technology and getting rid of the need to kind of work, is that necessarily a good thing mentally for people? And I think that's
Well,
a thing
I
we
think
don't
we
really
need
think about a
people
lot.
who understand the human condition in order to help others work through it too.
That's a great point. Actually, like understanding is half the battle, and I think it's important to know ourselves. But there's kind of a difficult thing. I am a painfully introspective person, and I introspect way more than I want to.
You don't say, Robbie. I never would have guessed from talking to you.
Yeah. And the problem is that when you're introspecting, you are thinking about yourself, and so in a very real sense, you are putting yourself first. You are not being focused on others, but focused on yourself. And pride, that self-focus, that self-conceit, is the origin of basically all evil. According to theology, at least Christian theology, it was the first sin. It was Satan's sin. That was the first thing, was pride, setting yourself up because you are yourself as above all else. And I recognize that although we look outside and we think that person, let's say, that person killed somebody because he was angry. But most of the time, the origin of that sin is pride, not actual anger. Lust is usually not the origin, it's pride. Pride is the thing that allows you to set yourself up above the moral law. Same with people like those who we all agree who are vastly more wealthy than they could possibly spend. The people who want power for the sake of having power are people who are proud. The people who, like, that is the telltale sign of pride, is you want to be able to play with other people as if they're puppets.
I think really those kind of people aren't that intelligent, because money doesn't actually equal true power, in my opinion. Because if you think about it, money only holds value because others recognize it. So people like Jeff Bezos, really, he couldn't operate if everyone just decided that his money meant nothing. He doesn't have true power. People give him that power.
That's not quite accurate, because he also has land, and but
people
really
recognize
savvy.
it.
Right.
But people recognize that as his land. If people chose not to recognize it, he has no real power. So all this power that people have are just others recognizing it.
Perceived.
That's a good point.
Right.
And so the truth is that no man really has much power at all. In fact, you don't even have power over your own body. At any moment, some kind of crippling disease might separate your mind from your body, and you're just stuck there trapped inside your own body.
It's only what
So
other
I think
people give
these
you.
people
Right.
Yeah.
who have all this money are people who don't actually recognize it. So I really don't think,
Just because that it's not true power in the sense of absolute power does not make it not power. And one thing that is very recognizable throughout history is that those people who have the power, will abuse it. Like those people who willingly seek out that power, and even though we both agree it's not absolute, they'll use it effectively. Like Hitler at any moment could have been ousted. People tried to kill Hitler. There was lots of times where people tried to assassinate Hitler. Countless
but
attempts.
now Hitler's known as one of the worst people ever. So
One of the worst. And then there's same with Stalin, same with Mao Zedong, same with Pol Pot. All these people, although they didn't have technically absolute power, were still able to use their unabsolute
if
power.
I had that power, I'd want my name to continue through generations in a good way, which means in order for me to use it effectively, I would help benefit others, because that's the only true way to.
They thought they were. That's the evolutionary theory, and actually Margaret Sanger, the beginner of Planned Parenthood, was the person who inspired Hitler to exterminate the Jews, because he believed that was the viral gene, that was like the bottom. Like he had a list. Like let's not all think that the Jews was his only target. There was also the blacks. There's also Asians. So the Japanese alliance wasn't a
where your
great idea.
family's, from.
Stop.
I do think that this is like a great conversation to follow down and kind of path upon. But I also think that we have like 30 questions. We've been on this for like an hour now, but we do have to cycle through into probably some less
Let's go ahead.
I like how we went from MMA.
Yeah, I know. I keep looking over here.
All right, let's go to something a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
So speaking of technology, Apple or Android, and why? So so Ryan's Android, Robbie's Apple, I'm Apple, and Buddy's Android. So we're 2-2.
I think Android has better specs. I think people who get Apples are really just trying to follow a trend.
I'm Apple, but I'm happy.
So Ryan, what phone do you have currently?
Well, I don't have that great of a phone in all honesty.
Well, okay, what would be like your if you had to pick like an Android phone, what would your like dream phone be? Like a Pixel 2, like a Pixel 2 or 3, or?
Yeah, probably, yeah. I also just have a lot of stuff on Android. I don't know if I with the Google Play Store. I bought a bunch of stuff through that. I don't know if I'd want to switch to Apple now and lose all that stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's like the whole like PlayStation versus Xbox like argument. It's like both are attached to their respective platforms, and like jumping would be like too much of a switch, and so both are like extremely comfortable. I don't know, buddy. What are your thoughts on this?
On Apple versus Android, not on PlayStation.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You know, I'm
that's a blood war.
Everybody pull out their shiv.
I'll be honest, in terms of like technical specs, what they can do, like you're talking to about a 5-year-old here. I don't understand what they're capable of doing. So I look at things, and if I like the design of it, I'll buy it. And I think Apple phones look cooler, and I also would like to have an Apple Card because I see a lot of those, and I think they're pretty neat. So
I've seen no one with an Apple Card, like literally no
dude,
one.
I see, they're tight. They're like all metal. Yeah, I dropped one the other day and it clanked, and I was like, "What was that?"
I'm just so sick of Apple's releasing, and like they have like one small new feature, and into that, it will be double what the last one is, and I'm like, no.
That's true.
Yeah, so my opinion, I'm Apple, but unhappy. If you were to ask me what my favorite phone would be, I would say carrier pigeon. Because I truly, like, honestly, it's like that was the most original. I was into carrier pigeons before they were using pigeons. No, I don't like how much control my phone has over me. I also don't like the ability it has to surveil me.
Right, but you've given it control.
Yes, I did, and I kind of regret that. And so now I've invested so much time and resources into it, and I use it so much that I do enjoy the convenience. I can listen to a lot of audiobooks really easily, also music very easily. I don't use it so much for communication because I don't have social media. I've eliminated that. But I do use the texting, which is really great. Calling, of course, it's very important nowadays. And it's almost a necessity now. Like, you almost have to have a phone to be a functioning member of society. So that's a different question. I don't really like Apple, though. I think Apple is... it's just a system I'm used to. I think the user interface is easier to use than Android. Although I recognize that the specs are undoubtedly worse, they are overpriced. It's a name brand. It's like buying Gucci. It's just a waste. It's a huge waste. You're basically buying a Supreme t-shirt. It's like there's nothing that's actually valuable about this. It's just perceived value. It's nothing intrinsic within the item is actually valuable. It's just an icon.
You know what I would do if I was Apple and you bought like a carrier pigeon? Just I would still surveil on you. I would buy like a falcon and train it to kill his pigeon and intercept its messages.
All right, Genghis Khan.
And bring it back to me. So I would still find a way to surveil on you.
Yeah,
it would be
they probably
cooler.
would. Yeah, they'd probably like poison my pigeon or something like that.
Make it all sick.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, and it's also just not universal to Apple though. Like all phones are tools for surveillance if they wanted to do it because of a bulk collection. Like all kinds of different agencies, all kinds of different people out there have the ability to. I'm not saying they are. I don't know. If
No, they probably are.
But undoubtedly people are. There's undoubtedly data miners out there, and I think it's immoral to do that, but I recognize that it's happening, and it is something, like you say, it's a choice we make to basically make our information available. I do hope one day to get away from using my phone as much as I do, and I really enjoy and I'm very proud of the steps I've taken to eliminate it.
Yeah, I think social media is like a big one of those.
Yeah.
One thing that I will say about Apple is I'm a big Apple user only because of what they term the ecosystem. So basically, an ecosystem is like you have a series of different products and they all communicate well together and they help you in whatever you need to use them for. And basically what happens is you get locked into that ecosystem. It's similar to like Adobe or any other like suite of platforms. Like they're great and they all work together, but like you can't diverge or change.
Yeah. Like Microsoft.
Like Microsoft. Microsoft is the worst offender because at least Apple makes their products well. Microsoft does not even pretend to anymore. They just recognize, all right, we've got a monopoly. We basically beat the competition out with a stick. Like we are
Amazon.
good.
Amazon's the same way.
Yeah. Although Amazon is a little bit nicer because at least they try to please their customer. Microsoft does not try.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't.
And then like I guess the other thing I would say is I'm like a huge design nerd, and so I understand Apple's want to like make things perfect regardless of like the actual functionality of it. So like for instance, like you know, they want to put a certain functionality into their phone, but oh no, it would make the phone too thick. So then they don't implement it, or they implement it in a different way that would make it thinner. Like it's always the functionality of it is to serve the aesthetic and not the other way around, which doesn't make sense for most people because most people, they want like the practical use of that item. So if they buy a phone, they want it to have these specific specs, and so then they get mad when like the front facing camera is like a lower resolution than like the back facing camera, or like, you know, any of these like
No
small
audio
things.
jack.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, that is like that's a huge thing for me. It's like, why are you not making reverse compatibility? I think reverse compatibility is the most basic principle to have. Like, make your new stuff.
That's a money thing though.
Yeah, but I mean, I just think it's ethical. I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's a matter of like I should just make new stuff and make people buy my new stuff. I think it's a matter of like, it's just ethical to not have that go to waste.
Could you imagine giving that during like a board pitch meeting in corporate Apple? But guys, what about ethics? Be like, Robbie, you're done.
Ethics. You're so cute. That's why we keep you around. So you say stupid stuff like that.
The one meme where the guy suggests something and just gets thrown out the window.
Yeah. Oh my. And this can be done for basically every major corporation right now, and every major player, especially I think in entertainment and culture right now. Like Disney, at what point is there anybody in this process who's like, yeah, guys, but what about ethics? Why don't we make some original content for once? And then they look over to him and they execute him promptly because that's just, you know, against their entire policy.
Yeah.
May our Disney overlords love and protect us.
Yeah.
I'm just here for Marvel.
So what?
I'm just here for Marvel.
Just here for Marvel.
Well, I think we beat that dead horse long enough. What are you guys' thoughts on cult films? And I guess we'll kind of have to like say what a cult film is, because not everyone is like privy to that.
Don't
Ryan,
look at me.
Okay, you sound like you wanted to. So I would classify a cult film as something that isn't necessarily like immediately popular right off the bat, but over time it gains like a following. Okay, so for cult films, I guess my definition of a cult film would be something like a movie that had come out like a long time ago, but it didn't immediately have like a mass appeal. It wasn't like immediately successful, but then became successful later on and like developed a fan base. That's what I would categorize it as. I know that some people categorize cult films as being films that aren't necessarily good films from a technical standpoint, but that people still love for, you know, nostalgic reasons or whatever reasons.
Well, there's like a third definition too about cult films, because there's some films which almost literally have a cult around them. Like Rocky Horror Picture Show has like a cult. That's a cult film. Like people go and have these weird rituals they do when they go to the theater and watch this movie.
That's true.
So
yeah.
You'd say a cult film is something that was originally not that popular, but grew popularity way later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People appreciate it later.
Do you guys have like favorite cult movies by like those definitions? Or your
don't know
definition?
if this one. I think this one gained popularity later on, but I don't know for sure. Do you know Attack on the Block has John Boyega in it? It's an alien invasion.
Of course it is.
John Boyega.
It was like,
It was before he was in Star Wars.
It's like those monsters, right? Little ones like
the
run
little
around
monkey
and shit.
things.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I know what you're talking
It
about.
is so funny. It's like, it's a comedy. Essentially, these like guys who are in the hood get attacked by these aliens, just fall from meteorites, and it just becomes a survival situation where like instead of it making it like super like oh no, they're gonna win or whatever, these guys just come up with baseball bats and just go, get out of my neighborhood, and just go bam.
It's got Nick Frost.
Nick Frost?
Oh yeah, because it's the UK. Because John Boyega is from United Kingdom.
Oh yeah.
He just puts on
I love
American
his accent, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
I really like John
it's such a
Boyega's
funny
accent.
film. I love it.
I always just think of him like being stupid and what was the last Star Wars called?
Yes.
Whatever one, yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
He got gypped. He got gypped, in my opinion.
He's just like, what's
He's
going on?
He's a good actor.
He's a
good
really
actor.
good actor. And
So is Oscar Isaac.
yeah,
Apparently from-
Oscar Isaac is a phenomenal actor. I'm looking forward so much to this Dune movie, which is coming out.
Same.
The 2-part thing. I'm so looking forward to it.
Apparently, from what I've heard, that John Boyega's character was supposed to have a bigger role, but he got on the nerves of one of the directors, so they kind of we're gonna make your role smaller.
Yeah. Well, it seems the way they set him up in the first movie, he was the most important character.
He was
and
definitely
then
the
Rey
Jedi.
was almost a secondary character.
Yeah.
But they changed that, and they get to live with their choices because they've earned the hatred.
I hope they just retcon. They retcon through the Mandalorian. That's what I hope for. It's just these are just an alternative history. That's what I hope happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any cult films?
Yes, I do. I have so many cult films which I really, really enjoy.
Well, let's hear it.
Number 1, It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay.
Did not succeed when it first came out. Didn't win Oscar.
That's true.
It was kind of not much known about, but it is without a doubt one of the greatest films ever made. Princess Bride. Also did not succeed. Terribly marketed when it first came out. One of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah.
I love it to death. The best sword fight in film history. There are some other films I can think of. I don't know if this is so much of a cult film. I don't know how it did when it came out, but Galaxy Quest. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah.
Galaxy
yeah.
Quest.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, Galaxy Quest, also a really good movie and kind of a cult film. There aren't so many of the famous cult films which I enjoy. I don't enjoy The Room. I don't enjoy Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I haven't seen all of either. So that's one of the reasons.
The Room.
I guess, yeah.
I feel
Not to be
like
confused with Room, which is actually a good movie.
Yeah, Room is good. Also very sad. One of the most sad movies that I've ever seen.
The only good movie with Brie Larson.
I think with the hard thing with the Room is that it's almost entirely based around the actual screenings. So you can't go to a screening where everyone is throwing spoons at the stage. If you can't go to one of those screenings, you're not going to understand the appeal. If you just watch it by yourself, you're not going to understand the appeal.
And so is apparently Rocky Horror Picture Show.
It's the
right
same
at
way.
screening.
People people dress up and as the characters, and it's like a more of an experience or an event.
They put the cult in cult films. That's the cultish part of it, where they literally following this film. But the other films are just films which didn't succeed at first, but later were appreciated.
Sharknado.
everyone. I guess, Sharknado is.
I'm still wrapping my head around the economics of Sharknado. How they keep on making these films because they
how
make
many
them
was it
so.
now? 6 or 7 or something.
Well, what they do is it's okay. So most films, people we want to make a good movie, so we get as big a budget as we can, we make as good of a movie as we can, and then we sell it.
Though.
And then with Sharknado, it's we're not going to make a good movie. No, we've resigned ourselves to the fact that we're not going to make a good movie, and so they get the least amount of budget they can do to get their product made.
That's what horror movies do.
Yeah,
That's literally the industry behind horror movies.
And then they just throw it out there, and enough people buy it to get the profit margin. Because what they're going for is the profit margin, not for lasting effect, artistic value, any of that, petty stuff.
I think when
love
you
horror
start
movies.
trying to make it a cult movie or a meme, and you specifically direct it, it's like trying to force a meme, I guess. It's not really going to work. And the first Sharknado was kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then everything following it felt kind of...
Pixels is a great example of trying to market a meme, and it does not
That was
work.
terrible.
Yeah,
that was an awful movie.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler has been in 40 movies. 2 of them were good. The man is my just inspiration. He never gives up. That man just goes out there and still keeps trying.
remote?
What are the 2?
Okay,
I'll tell you actually.
The
They're
Waterboy.
Uncut Gems.
Yeah, Uncut Gems,
and
Waterboy.
No.
Yes.
Punch Drunk Love.
No. I guess
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's okay.
I've made
It's
it my
Adam
life-
Sandler.
I've made it my life mission to watch as few Adam Sandler movies as I can. After watching Pixels, I'm all right, I've given up.
There is one scene in I think it's Happy Gilmore. That makes me laugh, and I think it's when he's at the. He has to give an explanation for how the government works, and it shows this montage of him explaining it, and his teacher's super happy of him, and then the guy who's asking the question is that was the most just incoherent, just rambled nonsense I've heard in my entire life. And we are all worse for hearing it. Good day, sir. And he just stands there. That part makes me laugh. But yeah.
Oh, man.
In terms of...
I was going to say, buddy, do you have any?
Yeah, I think John Carpenter's The Thing.
I just watched that. I didn't realize that's a cult film. Because actually, now that I think about it, it didn't get much reception. But watching it again, like that is really a good movie. I was kind of like, I watched it and I was like, oh, that's a good movie. It's probably not going to affect me later. And it's like 5 hours without sleeping. I'm like, is that the cat? Is it a cat?
So I guess my dad first, when he watched it for the first time, he turned on like during the scene with the snow dogs, and he thought it was just like a National Geographic documentary about snow dogs, not watching it because it just shows them like laying down. And then, like it starts to transform. He's just like,
Yes.
What's going on with those snow dogs down in Antarctica? Like those are not some normal ones.
National Geographic and their relentless pursuit to show the weirdest parts of nature.
Yeah, they're crazy snow dogs in there, but
it's like this demon dog turning into a monster, and the National Geographic cameraman just capturing it.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess that's. I feel like you are the go-to guy for movies. Like of all my friends, when I ask Cameron, like, what's a good movie to watch?
I think I just have two. There might be more, but I'm kind of blanking. So the two are Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner. I love like the whole like Blade Runner aesthetic.
Yeah.
I love the 2017 film. I guess you could classify the 2017 film as technically part of the same, but the first one is most definitely a cult film just because of like the length, like when it was released, and like nowadays like people still watch it. So I would say that one, and Donnie Darko, which I'm a big fan of. I know that some people don't like it. They don't understand it, or they don't like that it's so long, like that's as long as it is. But it's got like good depth, and it's probably the most unique time travel movie I think that I've seen, and just all the performances are good, and it's got like a good mythology, and I don't know, I like it a lot.
There's one movie, I don't know if you guys have watched it. I'm pretty sure it didn't succeed so much in the box office. I think I watched it on a plane, and if it's on a plane, it's like, it's one of those movies, so like either...
That's like the worst place to experience a movie.
I first watched it on a plane, but it was so good. Actually, I think it was... I was going with a family member. The family member was watching it. They're like, wow, this is really good. You should watch this. I'm like, I watched it. And then we ended up having to watch it in a normal experience because it was that good. It was, even on a plane, it was enjoyable. So it was really good. It's called Anthropoid. It's
yeah. With
Cillian
Murphy?
Yeah, with Cillian Murphy. I really liked that movie. It's kind of a thriller / action, but it's really, really intense, and it's about this assassination attempt to kill Reinhard Heydrich by these Czech paratroopers, and it is without a doubt one of the best films that came out of I think 2014. It's like it was one of those years which wasn't super great. I think
it was either 14 or 15.
I think
it was
I think I know one that qualifies then. Treasure Planet. It didn't do good in box office apparently.
We're talking about the Disney one.
Yes, I love that one as a kid. That was one of my favorite films, and I was reading up on it, and it didn't do good at all. And I was like, why? It's amazing.
That's the same thing with both. I guess It's a Wonderful Life wasn't so much, but with Princess Bride. Like Princess Bride, almost everybody loves it. There are very few people who watch The Princess Bride, which I've met, and are like, wow, that's a stupid movie. It's so witty, and it's funny, and it's well done, and the flow is very unique and entertaining that people really enjoy it. It's memorable. It's a memorable movie. But because it was so badly marketed, it just failed at the box office. It failed almost historically. Like it's... Oh my gosh, I just had a realization. Charlie's Angels will become a cult classic. If people start watching Charlie's Angels...
But they won't, though.
Which one? The new one?
The new one. The one which failed so historically at the box office. What were they, like 18 million deficit or something like that?
That was terrible.
Well, I guess the other interesting question about cult films is, like, does it still classify as a cult film if it has gained a ton of popularity? Because I think there are a lot of movies which are cult films, but they have popularity, but it's more of like a niche following than like mass following. So like The Princess Bride, like does that still qualify? Because now it's almost universally loved.
That's a good point.
I think it does. I think it's the hipsters that are just against it. Like they're like, no, it's gotta be in the little circle we have. You know, like no, it's a cult film if it did bad when it first came out. But
yeah, I think that's probably the best way of defining it. I guess cult films are the ones. No, technically, I think we might have a different word for it, because cult films, I was always under the impression, are the ones that are a cult. Like they have their own kind of following where people, it's like a niche group, which is like this cult that follows this film. Now, I think it might be different if you just have a film which doesn't necessarily have its own following per se, but it's just reevaluated later and found to be really, really good. Now, I think
I agree with that definition of it.
Yeah, so I think we should probably like keep them in the same group because I think some of these probably started out as like a cult. It's a Wonderful Life. Like there were some people watching old movies like It's a Wonderful Life is so good, and that was originally a niche following. And I know in my family it was like a tradition to watch it every single Christmas season. Like you have to watch it, if otherwise you're not, going to be part of the family anymore. And so I think there is kind of a cult behind even these more widely accepted ones.
You know another great movie is Alvin and the Chipmunks Shipwrecked.
All right, you're done. Okay, buddy, you're
I'm being
canceled.
serious. Hold on.
All right, get out, buddy.
It actually has a lot of great substance to it.
Go back to your cult.
All right.
I actually wish I could remember, because I know I've watched a lot of movies which are cult classics, and I have enjoyed them, but I just don't remember them. I guess a lot of Mel Brooks films. Young Frankenstein. I don't think Young Frankenstein did that well in the box office, but I'm not absolutely certain. Like there's some of these films which were not super successful, but they ended up becoming classics.
Yeah.
I guess like also like if a film was very popular and then it becomes even like exponentially more popular years later, does that class? Because I think of like The Shining, for example. I'm not sure how popular it was when it came out, but
it's super popular.
I love that movie. Yeah, really.
Or
popular.
Monty Python, anything by Monty Python. It was popular. Like it was popular. Like people watched it, but then it became so much of a cult. Like there's so much following behind that. It's its own fandom. It's become its own fandom, even though it's not really a franchise. So I mean, I guess. You can either define cult films by like cult films who have a cult or films which proved themselves beyond their box office. Yeah. And so I guess we got to choose which one.
Yeah. And so by that definition, I think The Shining would be a cult film along with A Clockwork Orange. But
Doctor Strange.
that's just like I feel like Dr. a Kubrick
Strange
thing.
I was literally asking
where
Kubrick did A Clockwork Orange, right? That guy's a genius, man. He does awesome movies.
And
Stanley
I think
Kubrick.
The thing about Kubrick is that he made movies to his vision, but like no one else, at least back then, like no one else understood his vision. And so a lot of his movies were universally panned when they were released because people either didn't understand them or they were too controversial or too, whatever. And so, people just like wrote him off and didn't like his movies. But then like now, we recognize Kubrick as like, one of the fathers of like cinema.
Yeah. Although I would say more of the creepy uncle of cinema, because I mean, like some of his stuff, like Eyes Wide Shut, or like even Clockwork Orange.
He was a weird
like,
dude.
There's a lot of this part which is like, okay, we get to see the artist, and the artist is a horrible, horrible person, but
Yeah, Alex is like literally the worst, but he's the protagonist.
That guy almost ruined Singing in the Rain for me. He almost did. That's actually another one. So Singing in the Rain. Is another one. Singing in the Rain was kind of panned because it wasn't like it succeeded, but it didn't have the same kind of success which it ought to have had, because considering its value, because it came out the same year as April in Paris? No. American in Paris. In American in Paris. I don't know if you guys ever saw that one. Exactly.
An American Werewolf in London? Is that
no, that is another cool classic. So An American in Paris, it was a great musical, huge budget, and it was like a big production piece. And so people really liked that one. That one won the Oscar. But the one that endured, no, you guys don't even know what the American in Paris is, but the one that endured is Singing in the Rain. Like everybody likes Singing in the Rain. That was the same year. Even same actor, Gene Kelly. And same with It's a Wonderful Life. It's more enduring than the one which actually won the Oscar, the one that became Best Picture. Yeah. Even though it was like runner up. So, yeah.
It's weird how that works, how like what's best at the time is not like what has the longest longevity.
Yeah. You guys remember Shape of Water? Yeah.
Right. No one does. That was awful.
No one I thought it was somehow connected to Hellboy at first because of the look of the...
Hey, is that you?
Man, Guillermo del Toro. I wonder how much of The Hobbit Guillermo del Toro is responsible for.
You know what? Speaking of the Hobbit, there are several recuts of The Hobbit where they take the 3 movies and they basically strip out all the unnecessary stuff and edit it into one like 3.5 hour movie.
What?
It's very, very good.
Is it actually good?
Where would you find it?
Nowhere legally. I mean, there's sites where you can like download someone's cut of it, but it's like not super high quality.
Yeah.
So you'd either have to again find it somewhere, wink wink, or you could just take one of the recuts and you could just recut it yourself if you have skill doing that.
And then when there's gaps in the story, like if there's something which you just had to fill in a gap, you just have like a 12-year-old reading The Hobbit into like a Call of Duty mic.
That is like a super interesting thing though, like where people take movies and they either recut them to like, you know, what they think their like cut of the movie is, or they just recreate it entirely.
Yeah.
Like there was that Indiana Jones. It wasn't like a student film, but it was like an indie project where they basically remade the entire movie, basically using like amateur like actors, and they had like a super low budget. And I think it's on YouTube. You can go and watch it.
Really?
There's also like the Princess Bride remake where celebrities from like all over the world during COVID like recreated the movie by doing like each person would like do a small bit and then they like strung all the bits together. It's not very good, but it is entertaining.
Yeah.
Well, there's what's the Justice League Snyder's cut that everyone's been pushing for?
Actually,
to release on
did you
HBO.
watch that? Is it
I was
any
going to
good?
say, I just saw that was released, right? Just
Wait,
now,
no,
there's a
not
trailer
yet.
for it?
It was about
They
the
probably want
trailer
people to
too.
be in theaters for it.
It's awesome because they took a lot of scenes that had like unfinished CGI and they actually finished it. I wish more movies did that.
At a cost though.
Yeah.
It was super costly for them to, I don't remember what it was, but it was like, it was in the billions for them to take all of that footage, recut it, add CGI.
So when you say redo CGI, I think what you mean is do CGI. Like
Yes,
actually.
either create or finalize.
Yeah, because it's like they didn't even try with that. I've seen like PS3 games that have way better CGI. Honestly, yeah.
At least got a mustache.
Yeah.
It's just
You know what?
Maybe that's not how it
I'm
works.
okay with it because the Mission Impossible movie he was in was actually pretty good because of that.
Yeah.
So if the sacrifice was
mustache?
for Justice League, then I'm okay with that taking the
I think it's an
fall.
unpopular opinion, but Fallout, Mission
Great
Impossible
movie.
5,
Yeah.
I think was one of the best movies of 20. I mean, there's a lot of good movies of 2019.
Really, I haven't seen it.
Okay, Ryan, what
really
did you
like
like
Ghost
about
Protocol.
it?
I fell asleep.
Contrarian
I
Ryan
fell
over here.
asleep during it.
But that's
It's
not
one
the
of
movie's
few,
fault.
Yeah, it's one of the few movies I've fallen asleep to. Usually movies manage to catch my attention.
In all
I don't
fairness,
even remember most of the plot at this point. I really don't.
you do have insomnia, don't you, though, where you can't sleep a lot of times at night, so maybe that also...
Don't play that. Don't let that.
Just throwing that
I
out
was gonna say,
there.
I've only fallen asleep during one movie, and it was when I went to a theater and I did a double feature, and the theater was very dark. I was very comfortable and warm. Yeah, so I understand. I also don't even remember what the movie was that I fell asleep during. It was either, it wasn't that good, or I don't know.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Yeah.
I know.
I
Okay,
mean,
so
I'll rewatch it, see if I have any different opinion to it. But last time I watched it wasn't enough to like captivate me.
So, my friend Judah, he falls asleep during movies all the time. It was the worst because I remember going to movies with him. Like, his family would take me on their dollar to go see movies. Now, I feel also really bad because the movies, like, we did go see, like, every single one was absolutely horrible. They were, like, either was the second Godzilla movie, which, like,
Godzilla's
we all,
awesome.
like, I wanted to pay them
Yeah.
back because, like, I'm so sorry. Or Captain Marvel. And then the one before that was X-Men Apocalypse. So, like, a consistently bad trend of, like, when we go to watch movies together, it's like we're watching a B-rated movie. But he could just sleep through everything. He slept through X-Men Apocalypse. I'm pretty sure he slept through Godzilla. Like, he sleeps through everything. And I don't understand how. Because we're paying money to be here. Are you just paying money to sit in this really nice, comfy seat?
I think Godzilla 2 was not that bad because Godzilla is one of those films that you're supposed to turn off your mind. Like, you're just supposed to see giant monsters fight.
Right.
That's true.
And like Godzilla 1 barely showed the monster, and
love
Godzilla
that
2
part.
they fixed that by being like, we're gonna show him a bit more, show him
I don't know
more
why
fights.
people were complaining
Yeah.
about that. That was my favorite part. Like, that is the part which grounded the original Godzilla, or the Godzilla 2014 one, into reality. And that's what actually kept me engaged in the movie. Because Godzilla 2, it lost all scale and it lost all consequence. I mean, literally, the main character, the person you're supposed to be rooting for, was a mass murderer who's responsible for the deaths of millions.
Talking
I don't
about
think
Godzilla?
Godzilla, no, Godzilla, the female protagonist who's also responsible.
Oh no,
for, like,
I didn't care for
all these
I
violence.
honestly cut
I
out
don't
the
remember the
humans,
plot.
just add
Yeah,
monsters
just like-
fighting.
it was horrible.
That's-
Yeah,
I always grew up on the black and white ones as a kid.
Yeah.
Like Godzilla vs. King Kong, the original, There's one where like there's a Godzilla that comes from space. That has like these little like
Mecha Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
Then there's
he's
Mecha
cool.
Godzilla too, the robot one.
What about the turtle guy?
Oh, Gamera.
I love that guy.
He's cool.
There were a few times my father would just turn off the English language and just be in Japanese. It wouldn't change the difference for me. I just want to see the monsters fight. And honestly, I still feel that way. Even though like there's a lot of movies I like to think on, but like Godzilla is one of those things that I'm like, it's more of a spectacle than it is like a narrative.
In the
my
words
opinion.
of Ken Watanabe, let them fight.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess it all kind of boils down to execution. I will agree with you that part is way more interesting than the human part. I do really like Shin Godzilla, basically because it takes the best of both worlds. Like you see the monster just like wreaking havoc, so it does have that element, but it also has a human element that isn't distracting and actually serves the plot really well.
Which one?
It's Shin Godzilla. It's Japanese.
Okay.
And it came out in, I want to say, 2014.
Yeah, something around there.
Shoshin Godzilla.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it.
It's very.
It wasn't
very
the American
interesting.
one, right?
No. It's you have to watch it in subtitles. But basically, Godzilla is seen as more of a force of nature, as similar to like the older movies.
Yeah.
Because you had like the original Godzilla where he was sort of a metaphor for like the atomic bomb, and he was more of like a force of nature than like something to be able to reckon
He wasn't
with.
personified.
Right.
Which is probably the biggest mistake these new movies are making, is trying to make you empathize with like a mass murdering monster.
Giant dinosaur.
Yeah, like a giant dinosaur. It's like, yeah, or like same with the Jurassic Park movies that they're coming out. It's like, are we supposed to empathize with this lizard? I never felt empathy. In the old movies, it's like, oh my gosh, that velociraptor just like tore that guy's arm off. What? No empathy there.
Now it's like the touching the hand on the glass.
Oh my word.
Cringe.
Do you guys remember that one movie, the second Jurassic World, where like she lets all the dinosaurs out because like they're just like me?
I was gonna say, buddy, we went to see that.
Yeah, we did.
It was us, right? Yeah, we went to see that. That was one of the big regrets of my
I
life.
love the original Jurassic Park movies. Like, I was almost going to say Jurassic Park 3 is one of like my like cult favorites.
Really?
And like the raptors, I used to be able to mimic them pretty well when they do that.
You want to do an impression?
Show me
buddy?
Jurassic Park 3.
What?
You gonna do an impression?
Yeah, I'll do one. So they're like,
now you can't do it when your eyes
I
on
felt
you.
stupid.
We're all watching.
They're like, cool. They're like, whatever. They make like a weird like cawing noise, and they like come out, but then they're just kind of like, they're like pet wolves in the third one. And he's like following him in the butt. It looks really stupid.
Yeah.
I didn't like the new ones that much.
Which is a bummer, because I think they had a really good cast with the new Jurassic World movies, and they're the IP, like the intellectual property, that's a valuable franchise, which they're using. But it's just too bad. It's like bad writing can undermine the best of scenarios. Like if you have bad writing, same with Star Wars, great creative team, like you have a great production team, even good directors, but if you have bad writing, then it's just, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, especially with like actors, you can give a somewhat mediocre actor like good writing, and it can be fairly good.
Yeah.
But even if you give like the best actor writing that is subpar, that is not written well, there's no way that they're going to be able to take that and transform it into gold.
That's one of the reasons why I think people hate Nicolas Cage. Is because, now hear me out, guys. People hate Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage has proven himself to be a very good actor. You guys have seen some of like what is it? Is it Sleepless in Las Vegas? Something like that? No. That's like Sleepless in Seattle. No. Lost in Las Vegas or something like that. Or maybe just anyway, he's played some parts. He's won Oscars. He's a good actor. But I think a lot of the faults which he's given is because like he's given really terrible writing. And Hayden Christensen's entire career has basically been
I'll
destroyed.
agree with you on Hayden Christensen. I'm not going to agree with you on Nick Cage. I think the best Nick Cage movie is when he has the least amount of dialogue. Mandy, yeah.
Okay, that might be true. I haven't seen too many Nick Cage movies.
He's like more of an expressionary, would you say, kind of actor. He does actions pretty well, and he's good at having one look on his face and kind of going through the motions. And when you try to give him dialogue, he sort of falls apart.
He's like a physical actor, I would say.
Well, you know that new movie he's in, like it's the Five Nights at Freddy's, whatever one. He's totally silent, doesn't have any lines. So it might be
what? To the Five Nights at Freddy's?
It's called
movie?
Willy's Wonderland.
Willy's Wonderland.
It's
basically
definitely
FNAF.
Five Nights Five Nights. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically it's
Except
Friday
that
Night.
it's the opposite, where it's not the animatronics that are killing the humans, but it's the other way around. He's there to exterminate the animatronics, and he's good at it.
Yeah.
Really?
Wait, I didn't even know this was where.
It just came out. I think it went straight to digital. Basically, the new straight to DVD.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a 2021 movie.
Is it good?
Haven't watched it yet,
No,
so
I'm gonna have to check it
you'll
out
have to find out. Maybe it'll be a cult film.
Maybe. You never know. I mean, it was a cult game, right? Friday Night at Freddy's.
Sure. It was definitely an indie game.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Well, it got a lot of really quick appreciation. Probably too much, though. Probably killed it.
I think it got poisoned by the amount of like overly obsessive weird fan art
It was
that gets
because of the-
posted online.
it was because of the
Weird-
lore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
So
people
they
get
tried
creepy.
to give it a lore, and they tried to give it more of a story, which
And-
I think is good. Like, you have to give something
The lore,
depth for people to latch onto it, but people went too far. Same with Undertale.
yeah,
Yeah.
the lore was good in the beginning for Five Nights at Freddy, and then they just started getting more convoluted
Well,
as the games went on.
Here's
I was
the
like,
thing. So lore is good if you have the lore to begin with. But if you're just making things up to try to make yourself seem more credible, audiences catch on. Same, like this is a great example. J.K. Rowling is a great example of a writer who was she was writing by the seat of her pants. Like, she did not know what she was writing ahead of when she was writing it. There's a lot of inconsistencies within the stories of Harry Potter. There's a lot of times where it's like, wait a minute, how can a man be falsely imprisoned if they have truth serum? Like, that's one great question. It's like, how can you legally do that? There's a lot of inconsistencies and it's bad writing, but
Because she didn't know that it was going to be
didn't know.
successful when
Hermione's
she...
little time thing.
she didn't know, like, she didn't know when, she just did not know what she was writing ahead of time. Now, if you want lore and consistency, go to Tolkien. Like, Tolkien is the king of lore and consistency. He has entire languages which have their own rules for speaking.
Yeah, he went a little overboard.
Yeah, maybe a little
yeah,
bit
I've read the
overboard for the lore.
Silmarillion. Oh my gosh,
But have you read the appendices?
no.
So the reason that people enjoy Tolkien and the reason people appreciate Tolkien and the reason Tolkien is still held up as one of the greatest writers of all time, the reason why The Lord of the Rings is the second best-selling book in the 20th century behind the Bible was because of his consistency and because of his work. Like, he planned it out. It was creation all into itself. Whereas with like the lore of Friday Nights at Freddy's, they just made a good game, and then people were like, "Oh, this is really successful. Well, what made you think of it?" And then they were like, "Oh, we have to come up with something really smart. Like, we have to come up with some really good story."
Yeah.
And people can tell when you're lying. And so, yeah.
Do you think that's really because, like, I think that's probably a part of it. But again, I think the weird, creepy, like,
The fan art.
Yeah, people put online about like the fox doing like the whatever, like, sexy pose, and he's just, you know.
There is-
I
okay.
think that's probably what killed the game more than
There's like
anything.
I'm pretty sure there's a rule of the internet about that. Like,
Yeah.
if it exists, there's weird, creepy fan art about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sad thing too about that is that it can actually harm the games themselves. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know about what happened to Undertale. Basically, so have you guys played Undertale?
I watched you play.
I played some of it.
I know the meme, unfortunately.
So basically what happened is this guy, Toby Fox, created the game, created the music, did the programming, basically did everything in it. And it was like a pretty big passion project of his. And, you know, he's like the typical like nerd gamer, is like super like, you know, he doesn't like, you know, being at social events, and he doesn't like, you know, taking a lot of like credit for his work. And so what happened is that, you know, it's a good game. I like it a lot personally, but what happened is that the community latched onto it too much, and it grew into this thing that belonged more to the community than it belonged to him.
Yes.
And so as a result, what happened is he stopped making games permanently. He's never going to make another game again.
No, he
And-
actually doing a sequel.
Oh, is he?
Delta Rune,
Really?
I think is what it's called.
Oh, snap. I didn't know that.
So yeah, there's
That's cool.
that,
That's
yeah.
cool. But yeah, I mean, for that part of his life, like it really harmed him, like psychologically, and really harmed the game as well. Like, you can't, if you tell someone, like, have you played Undertale, the first thing that they're gonna think of is that like weird spin-off of a spin-off of a spin-off that is just like, it's insane.
Well, I think originally he was going to do DLC for it and stuff like that, and then after it just grew so big, he was just like
Step away.
he did some like you know, on different consoles. There's some improvements on it, but besides that, he's pretty much backed away from it.
That's really sad to see the work of an artist ripped out of their hands or spoiled. Actually, that's what we're seeing to Tolkien. I mean, right now, if we're talking about the Amazon series, they're going to try to make... What was the words? I remember reading an article about it. The first words they used to describe their series is something like, I think, diversity.
They're probably going to try to make it.
They're like, all right, about an English myth, we're going to make it diverse.
Like Game of Thrones.
Have you heard
I
about
think they're going to get Game of Thrones. They're going to make it like Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
I've
they're
heard
gonna
the
make
last
Game of Thrones.
Airbender live action adaptation that they're doing on Netflix. I've heard all but horrible
another one?
things. Yeah. The creators were like brought on, and I thought, oh, this is going to be good. They're actually bringing in the original creators. And then they left due to creative differences. And at that point, I'm like, nope, it's done. It's gone.
Although at the same time, okay, I do sympathize with the people who are trying to adapt because without a doubt, I know I would if I had my own work and I was trying to protect my own work. I would be really protective and I would probably handicap anybody who is trying to adapt it. So I think the best works of art are the ones which are adapted by the creators themselves. The Princess Bride is the only thing which I like the book as much as the movie. And like to an equal amount. And that's because the same writer wrote the screenplay who wrote the book, which is unique and you can't find that in many other situations. But in other situations, there's that conflict, there's that fight. I don't know if you guys have seen Saving Mr. Banks. It's basically the entire story is that fight over Mary Poppins. Like,
I mean, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
You have to finance it yourself, and you're going to put yourself in your grave because of all the stress.
Yeah.
Like, it's either that, or you go with a studio that is going to micromanage everything that you do.
I think it's better if they just... I mean, I'm of the opinion that as soon as you create something and you've profited off the main work, it should just become free use for like anybody to use. Maybe you take like a... what's the right word? Like you take a part of the money from it, but anyone can adapt it because... Like, look at what's happening to Harry Potter now. I mean, the author is like all the weird things she's been posting about it. And if you've seen The Cursed Child, I mean...
Okay, so that's a great example, though, of... I mean, I could have read Harry Potter. I was, like, foreboding to, but I did eventually read Harry Potter. I made a deal, like, they would read Lord of the Rings with a friend, and then I would read Harry Potter.
How much did it shake your faith reading those books?
Reading those books, it shook my faith in human nature because I was like, how could this possibly become famous? I read it and I was so disappointed because it was so hyped up to me that I could not understand how it could possibly become famous, except for reading it at like a formational time in your life. Like if you're reading it like as a growing up kid, I can see why that'd be really important to you. Yeah. But besides that, if you read it as an adult, you would read it and be disappointed. Because if you read other, like, better literature, like, if you read classics, then going to this, you would just be disappointed. Like, that's the only word that you can use to describe it. It's just disappointing. It lets you down from the hype. So it might have been, like, I don't know, like Peter Rabbit books. Like, it belongs with Beatrix Potter. Harry Potter belongs with Beatrix Potter. No. Yeah, so I think that's a great example of like the source was already cursed from the beginning. Like Harry Potter was the way it was written because she didn't know, like because she didn't contain it from the beginning. She didn't know what she was writing when she wrote it. She just like was kind of flying from the seat of her pants. It's no surprise that she's still flying.
Yeah, but I'm saying if it was something that was available to anyone to use, then I feel like some people could make actual real golden product.
And that's the one reason why Disney is still making live action movies is because they every so often they have to make an adaptation so that they can hold on to the copyright for that thing. That's the only reason why they're remaking these movies.
But that copyright's
so
going to expire one of these days.
Retain the copyright. Yes, it will expire, but not for like a long time. Like the copyright laws are way too long.
And every time they've almost expired, they've always extended it. Did you know Mickey Mouse is going to expire in like 3 more years? They're probably going to pass something to push it back further.
Yeah.
So I understand like why that copyright law. Okay, here's the way I look at it. Like I don't
lifetime
necessarily
plus
think
70+ years.
I think plagiarism should be prosecuted. I think plagiarism is a serious thing, like to steal someone else's work and put it as your own. But little things like the name of mouse and things like that, I don't really think count as plagiarism. Like that's the thing which we call copyright law nowadays is not serious plagiarism. I think there are many cases of plagiarism nowadays which are not properly enforced, because they don't fit the criteria of like, oh, you use that name, you use this thing. Think about The Lion King. The Lion King, without a doubt,
is also plagiarized.
Is plagiarized. Like from not only that story, the Japanese version. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but then also literally from Shakespeare. They're stealing it from Shakespeare. And so I don't mind them stealing from Shakespeare. Most writers do, but and I think it's good like to draw on other writers and other creation, but to draw on it with respect is the most important thing. And if modern fantasy, if modern science fiction has taught me anything, it's that there is no respect for the original. It's not a matter of drawing on it; it's a matter of just respecting it.
Look at Rosencrantz and
Guildenstern.
Yeah. Like that's a good like. I wouldn't say it's like an adaptation, but it takes elements from Shakespeare and makes a new thing out of it versus just taking elements and making the same thing just with a different scale.
Or the complete works of William Shakespeare abridged, which you guys would be surprised. I think it's actually quite it's a very faithful to the original spirit of Shakespeare, which Shakespeare basically chose to make a buck. So.
Ryan, nothing you really just want
What
to
are you
say.
thinking?
Yeah, like,
No.
I was going to say, you're talking about like copyright laws and things like that should be either enforced more and I never realized how easy they are to be manipulated. Have you guys seen the show like Nathan For You?
Yeah.
Dude, have you seen the episode?
I love that show.
With Dumb Starbucks?
Yes, Dumb Starbucks.
Literally, this guy, he's all about like figuring out like how to like abuse laws and like copyright, and he just exposed the system for being so stupid. And he was able to open up a store called Dumb Starbucks, and it literally uses the Starbucks logo and everything. And it has the exact same menu, and all he does, he puts dumb in front of the name of every single thing on there. Yep. And he just uses a parody law as a way to get around it, saying, oh, this isn't like an actual...
It's like an art gallery.
Yeah, he says, this is an art gallery, and I'm just doing a parody of Starbucks, and part of the parody is me selling and making profits to parody Starbucks' corporate structure. And he was just allowed to do it, and Starbucks couldn't sue him or do anything.
I'm in the wrong
They got
business.
so many... They got
was crazy.
so many, like, so much traction, so many customers for, like, the period that it was open. It was eventually shut down, though. For whatever they got him in like a technicality or something, but
if I had my way, copyright law would just be thrown out the window. And honestly, like
you'd be like China.
Honestly, it's like you come up with an idea. It's not your idea. It's
our idea.
well, no, like if you can continue profiting off the original creation, but why can't other people just draw from that and add their own things? As long as they're not making an absolute copy of it.
You can't make an absolute copy of anything because you cannot make everything the same. So what is your definition of the same? It's like there's like at some point you have to approximate.
Right.
Like if someone just made Star Wars but like changed one's character's name or something.
Like more remixes.
Yeah.
So remixes is our entire musical
everything is
culture
already
now.
a remix, but I think it would notch up to the next level where the better quality or better crafted things would rise to the surface as opposed to the most popular things being risen to the surface.
Exactly. And I feel like that would be a very good thing.
At the end of the day, you can't really...
Ryan for president.
No matter what system you create, no matter what rules you put in place, there will be people, like bad men will find a way of working with the new system. It doesn't matter what system you have.
That's pretty much government.
Yeah, that's basically no matter what system. I think we have a really good system as it is. Now, it's not perfect, but I think it is a really good system comparing to history, comparing to our contemporary countries. I think it's a really good system. But even within our system, there's still people who take advantage of this. You can't make people respect other people's work. You cannot make people be honest.
Exactly. So just make it free.
We're getting to like a weird period in time too, though, where it's like if you get rid of all copyrights, like what happens, say in like 20 years from now, if Disney has technology and they're like, you know what, I want to make a movie and I'm going to call it Ryan. And it's going to be about Ryan Paltine. And I'm just going to like CGI you on there as like a weird guy and just like make you do stupid stuff though.
But it's not going to like...
I mean, they can do that.
That's still like slander and stuff if they like do like... Ryan Paltine was an evil man. He did many bad things.
If there's no copyright, like how can you...
This is also actually related to, we were talking earlier about surveillance and our phones and everything.
Right.
It's the morality of like information collected about you. Does that belong to you? That's a really good question. I think it does. I think morally, information collected about you does belong to you. I think if anything, copyright law does not need to be more like strict or not. It doesn't necessarily need to be taken away because copyright law, the law of people being allowed to sue, like the liability thing, that can be abused in a lot of ways. I think lawsuits should be made more difficult.
But you do realize a lot.
I don't think that you should be able to intimidate somebody through your excess of resources and your excess of lawyers into giving up their position. Like, I think that might need to be changed. I would probably want more people to be empowered and to defend themselves in court. I don't necessarily think that less people should go to court or there should be looser laws.
I kind of think that's just part of human nature, though. I think intimidating people with more power, that's, it doesn't matter how much legislation you put, that's always just going to...
There's just one little step that might improve the matters. Right. If you make defending yourself in court easier, at least especially in civil court, like making it easier to defend yourself against these larger corporations. Because I know a lot of people who, I don't know them personally, but I know of a lot of people who just, you settle because it's cheaper. Like, you can't afford to defend yourself. And so there's, I think, a serious moral lapse that happens there. If people can win just because they have more resources, not because they're in the right, especially when it comes to the court system, that's a bit of a lapse. And I think that has to do with, like, it's not a matter of our copyright laws are necessarily super unjust, but the way we're enforcing them, I don't know. I think the matter of enforcement is probably way more important than the matter of what they are.
I would hate to say this right now, but I kind of have to get going because I do gotta be at downtown by 4 o'clock.
Thanks for being on the
podcast. Yeah, well, you guys are welcome for having me. This is probably going to be the best episode yet, so I will be gone.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
I guess I'll just read out some questions, and if you want to talk about them, we can talk about them.
Okay.
Are cinematic trailers for video games false advertising?
Okay, let's dwell on that question.
Yeah.
Possibly. It's I don't know. What do you think? I think cinematic trailers, what they do is they try to make it seem like a movie. They're not advertising the thing itself, and so because consumers for video games are maybe the only consumer base that, for the most part, most people think they're trying to buy a game, but what they're really trying to buy is a movie, which they can be a part of. And it's
I think it depends on how they advertise it, right?
And it depends on the game. There's a lot there's a lot of specifications which can change it. But I think for the most part, yeah, I think for sure it's not necessarily false advertising, as in it's not giving you what you promised. It's just, I don't know. I think it's people expecting what they shouldn't.
Well, like, okay, but then there's some cases where it kind of is false advertising, like The Witcher. When they showed that and the graphics looked 10 times better than when the game actually came out, that's false advertising in my opinion.
That's true.
Even if they say not actual footage of the game, I'm like, then I have no way to estimate what the game actually is going to be.
True.
So
it's not a matter of they're lying, they're just not advertising. So it's like they're advertising the logo, but they're not advertising the actual game. It's
like a roundabout way of being like, we're going to show this and we're going to make people believe this, but we're technically going to have these little words underneath just so we can't get in legal trouble.
I think it really is the whole thing about people play games, but video games, I don't know when it was. It might have been like the first Call of Duty where they forgot that a video game should be your control. That a video game is all about your choices and the consequences of your choices, and it's not about you just participating in this pre-made story. So that's the direction which the engine, like the idea of games, lends itself to. If you want to be artistic about it, so really, Detroit Human or whatever that game is, Detroit Remaining Human, Become Human. Okay, whatever.
Well, you gotta make
So you haven't played it.
Yeah, well, I've watched it.
Heavy Rain?
What?
You played Heavy Rain?
Heavy Rain? No, I haven't. What is it?
It's good. It's a good game.
It's another one like it, right?
It's made by the same studio, very similar. You have different choices. It's essentially I haven't played it, but I have like researched it a bunch. Have you played it, Ryan?
Heavy Rain?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, it's essentially I can't remember who you play as, but essentially you have to like uncover who this like serial killer is, and based on your choices you can go down a bunch of different like predetermined paths, like a bunch, like not as many as Detroit Become Human, but Detroit Become Human has a lot of different paths that you can go down.
I've heard it. I know what you talked about. I've heard of it.
Yeah. Is that the one? So it's like either you catch the serial killer, or like the serial killer gets away in like a number of ways.
Don't you also get to play the serial killer too? Or
yes, you do. You do during points of the game, but you don't know that he is the serial killer. I don't want to like spoil it for
Yeah,
you just
interesting.
played it, but yeah, you do play as the serial killer at one point. You just don't know that it's him until like way on later in the game. And but there is a trophy actually attached to making it so that the serial killer gets away scot-free, which is one of the harder endings to get. Basically, to get that trophy, you have to know like who the serial killer is, and then you have to be intentional about like doing everything wrong, like killing people and all this like terrible stuff. You basically have to be dead inside to like get that trophy. It's not like you're gonna accidentally like let him get away scot-free.
That one person who actually did do it accidentally somehow, and they're like, I was just trying to be
like,
chaotic.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, they went on to become a dictator or something like that. That is the one with a meme, though, the hold X for doubt. Am I wrong?
No, that's Detroit.
That's LA Noir.
Wait, is that
L.A.
Noir?
Okay.
Yes,
That's
that's a Rockstar
Oh
game.
yeah, I know what you're.
one of the better memes, in
Yeah.
my opinion, but,
I actually LA Noir I actually don't like that much. I know it's like controversial. I know that there are a lot of people that like that game, but it's very like scripted, and the like quote unquote revolutionary like face tracking technology I feel like actually isn't that great. Like there's a lot of times when it's either the wrong like facial animation that's playing or one that is not clear enough as to like what their motives are. And so it's less about like reading their face and more about like knowing what kind of facial animation, like corresponds to whatever choice. I don't know.
sounds like Oblivion. Just like their face is going like...
It's like they're trying to do like detective work, but it's so scripted to the point where it doesn't feel like detective work. It feels like you have to like know exactly what to do and press the right buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think most detective games would
It has good music though.
Oh, interesting. Well, it is a noir. It does have the word noir.
It's like the perfect like 1950s and 60s like schmaltzy like jazz kind
I
of
love
like
that music.
It's great.
That's my weakness. It's like a mixture between that. There's this one
It's
artist
like
called
trumpets
Potsu.
playing in the rain.
Oh man, I love that kind of music.
I know you like Potsu because I see you listen to it all the time on Spotify.
Yeah, I do. It's my cool down music.
So back to the question, I honestly think that most cinematic trailers they try to replicate the experience of the game rather than the actual game itself. So, you might have like an MMO game, which to someone who plays that MMO, it's super engaging and it's super exciting. And like it feels like they're engaging with it more than they actually are. So for them, it might be like super cool and super engaging. And so they're trying to capitalize on what it feels like by playing a cinematic trailer that is different from the game, but that captures more of the experience. The problem is that not everyone who plays that game is going to have the same experience. So for people that are not MMO players, that are just, they see this cool trailer and they want to check it out. So they check it out and it doesn't live up because, either they're not the intended audience or they just don't understand the game itself.
Yeah. I think also, it's marketing, it's manipulation. That's the intention, is to manipulate you into thinking that it's something other than it is, which is marketing. So, yeah. Yeah, it's another one of those things. It's kind of an evil which can't quite be perfectly solved.
What's the most obscure fact you know? Obscure facts. So like something that maybe is or isn't useful. I mean, it could be useful, perhaps. So not necessarily a useless fact, but something that most regular people wouldn't know.
Of course, all the obscure facts leave my mind.
So I probably should have like given this question to you guys beforehand, so you could have like thought
I
about
had time to think about it. I keep
No,
on saying obscure facts.
I have a bunch, but then now that I'm trying to think, I can't think of any.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, maybe we'll come back to it.
I keep on pulling up these things in conversation and getting weird looks from people. It's like, hey, did you guys know? And then I say it, and people look at me and give me this funny little expression like, you obviously didn't know. Well, I hope that's useful for you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I come across a lot of this because I listen to a lot of like science podcasts.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like interesting like facts about like nature or like biology or like whatever. that you wouldn't like that an ordinary person wouldn't know, but obviously someone who studies that for a living is going to know like a lot like of really in-depth stuff. And so what you get when you listen to those kind of things is you come away with all these really interesting specific things, but there's no way to use them, and they're just like really oddly specific. And I'll probably think of some, but it might take a while.
I'm trying to think of the most obscure fact I know. I'm just gonna go with this one. America's never lost a war when donkeys were in use. So, that's a pretty obscure fact. But
Wait, when donkeys were in? Oh.
you know, Planet Earth. You guys ever watch that? You guys watch that BBC Planet Earth show?
No, but the music's really good.
I know, right? That's what I was just about to say. It's like the
I feel like
soundtrack.
we've talked about this
so
before.
great. No, but in that, there's all kinds of weird, obscure facts, like weird, obscure animals and weird, obscure things, which they bring up. It's like, I feel like if we wanted to get a good idea of what planet Earth is, this is giving a very weird impression. Like, this is not the average.
I remember I heard about this one monkey that gets so stressed out, it would just start banging its head against a tree until it dies. Like, as soon as it reaches a certain stress level, it just tries to kill itself.
Are you talking about humans?
No.
Or what? 'Cause
It's like some weird monkey. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my tongue.
Yeah.
But I found it so weird that there's just a self-destructive animal like that just in the world naturally.
There's a lot of those animals which seem really destructive.
Like what?
The sloth.
All right, that's a bit of a stretch.
Sloths will grab their own arm accidentally and fall to their death.
But that's because their reaction time is like,
Yeah, okay,
1 frame per hour or something.
Oh yeah, koalas share the same kind of fingerprints that humans do. There was one koala that killed a dude, and
koalas are really aggressive.
They saw the fingerprints, and it matched some guy a few countries over, so they tried to arrest him for it. And he wasn't there at all. It was a koala that killed the dude.
What?
Yeah, they look cute, but they are like insane, and yeah.
Ooh, platypuses also. Platypi?
I'm sure it's one of those ones where it's like some other unrelated word that is the plural, but doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it was like quinine. That's what they're called. Plural.
Right?
No,
It's like, what? That makes no sense.
Yeah, platypi are venomous. That's something interesting. They have little spines. So
Aren't they also like iridescent? Like they have iridescent things in their skin or fur?
I don't know.
I think it was actually recently discovered. It was like an accidental discovery where they were using some kind of light or for some exhibit or something, and they're like, "Oh, that actually makes these platypuses like glow," or it was something like that.
Yeah.
Glow in the dark.
Glow in the dark platypi. Wow.
Platypus. I don't platypi. I don't know what the plural is, but no, they're really weird.
We can look it up.
PARRY. That's the platypus.
I think
Platypus plural.
when they were first found, a lot of people thought it was like one of those fake cryptid things.
Yeah,
like how like Bigfoot and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this, guys. You would never believe the animal which we just discovered.
So it's just platypuses.
Platypuses. Okay, makes me feel better. There's also another. So Komodo dragons. We have an antibiotic from Komodo dragons called Dragon 1, which is extremely effective, which we get out of their plasma in their blood.
Super effective.
It's super effective. Yeah.
Huh.
That's interesting. They also, yeah. Oh, actually, the most obscure fact I know, the animal that has killed the most people is the Champawat tiger, and it killed like 238 people. That's what I know.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. That is the most obscure fact I know.
Obscure facts for.
Also, some obscure facts, which shouldn't be obscure facts, is what I've learned about Unit 731, but that is not what I'm going to talk about on this podcast.
Yep. Research time.
Yeah. Yeah. Research it at your own risk.
What embarrassing memory will forever be burned into your mind?
Oh my.
Oh, okay. Well, I have one to share.
Oh, that was fast.
So, as a kid, I was super freaked out. So I used to like bugs, but I got freaked out about them at some point. And in middle school, it was probably the worst time I ever had with bugs. Like, I had bees chase me for no reason whatsoever. Well, one time, I I was sitting with my friend, and we had these heavy metal desks. Like, these desks are heavy, and I was very skinny. I was very weak. Like, I pretty much had no muscle on my bone at all. And he decided to put, like, I think a piece of candy in front of me or something when I wasn't noticing. He was like, "Oh, hey, Ryan, there's a stink bug." And so I freaked out, and without a moment's thought, while the teacher was like trying to teach us like some lesson, I just flipped the entire table over, and it just went and everyone was like looking at me, and I'm like, "There was a stink bug." Like,
That's actually kind of awesome. I love that.
Oh man, best reflexes ever. I don't remember the most embarrassing moment. There are some which I'm not allowed to forget, because if it were in my power, I would find a way to forget the most embarrassing moment. I mean, I'm so good at forgetting things. But I think one which comes to mind is I was watching a Twilight Zone episode, Terror at 20,000 Feet, or Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. And it's this one about a gremlin. And I jumped out of my skin, like I was reclining in a chair, and I jumped pretty high, like out of the recliner and stuff, because it did one of those jump scares where just like immediately the camera's on like the face of the gremlin right up on the window. And
Nice.
I don't know, I think I was like 14 or something. It was pretty embarrassing. But anyway, yeah, that was probably the most that's what I'm reminded of the most, because my sister was unfortunately there to
Nice.
see it. How about you?
When I was younger, I did this like comedy skit routine type thing, and I had like just like a really odd hat, like a fuzzy hat, and I had like the joke, like the typical like joke glass, like the glasses, the nose, and like the mustache.
Yeah.
And I video recorded it, and it's pretty bad. It's very cringeworthy.
Oh my.
It's pretty bad.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wish that I could just delete it from like everywhere, just forever.
From the internet?
Just gone, just not even from the internet, just from existence.
Just gone, yeah. I feel ya.
Okay, you're old and you're on your deathbed. So with your last breath, you deliver your final words to anyone that you know. So what do you say, and who do you say it to?
Cowabunga, my dudes.
To
I don't know. Let me think. This one actually requires, if I want to be genuine, then it's a different matter.
Oh, I
wanna
think
come
I'd
up
mess
like,
with
the proper
someone.
response.
Like I talked to someone who's like a very big believer in Christianity or something. I'd be like, "Oh God, it's so dark!" Like freak them out. Like, no, don't actually mean it, but like just to mess with them.
It's like from Megamind. It's so bright and dark and warm and light.
There's nothing. Just like scare the living daylights out of them.
yourself. Yeah. Nice. I think I would do something similar, something jokey. It'd be like, you know how there's like these crazes where like someone dies and they tell someone that like they've left like treasure or like something valuable just like hidden right out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And there's like these mass groups of people that go to these areas to try to find these different things, and like no one finds anything. I think it'd be really funny to do that, but like point them to somewhere where obviously it's like there's nothing there. But like such a large enough region where like people would be looking for like a long time. I don't know. I think that'd be really funny. Like, obviously, you'd have to be like, you'd probably have to be somewhat well off to be able to have some, have it be, where people like believe it.
Mm-hmm. You could terrorize one of your friends though and make it step further. Say that you buried it in their yard, and then you got everyone trying to dig up their yard.
There you go. Nice.
I don't know. If I were a little bit older, I'd confess to assassinating JFK or something like that as a joke.
I think you need to be a little older for that.
Yeah, but I mean, there are all kinds of things you can do as a joke. I think honestly, I couldn't say what I'd do. It's all relying on the fact that I'll be old when I die. Now that's not a given. I think my odds are against me.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to do it now. Then is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it now.
Do it now.
Do it.
Okay, comfort food. So it could be a movie, a book, a game, or a show, but something that you have seen many times that you keep going back to because it's comfortable. I think for a lot of people, watching like Lord of the Rings is like a comfort food where it's like they've seen it so many times that like they know like literally everything that happens. But it's one of those things where it's just like it's nice to watch. As opposed to experience something new that like you don't know what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is like you're very comfortable because you know everything that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Oblivion.
Say what?
Nice.
Oblivion. I think I've had at least like 12 different playthroughs of it. Because it's just fun to get involved in the world and just like go through the quest. It's very monotonous, but it's really like, I don't know, it's just something to do when you got nothing else to do.
Yeah. I think Lord of the Rings is undoubtedly one of my comfort foods. Reading it is also something like that. I think with shows, I never was super into TV shows. I've gotten into only a few of them, and none of them consistently. So I don't think I could really say any show is. And when it comes to games, it's weird enough, but I think Dark Souls might be my comfort game.
I think my show would probably be X-Files.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. In an unrelated chain of events, I'm not very comfortable most of the time. Yeah. What about you, Cameron?
Skyrim. Very chilling. It's very like chill, like
Literally chill.
just gonna like literally just like chill out and like do whatever. Because there's like, I mean, there's so many things that you can do and it's like just fooling around in Skyrim.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they're gonna release it on the PS5?
I think it is already on the PS5 through backwards compatibility.
Yeah, it won't get a separate release unlike GTA 5.
Oh, I don't know about
GTA
that.
5 needs to stop. Just stop re-releasing it. Like we don't need it again. We what we need is a new game like GTA 6, another Red Dead game, literally anything else other than GTA 5.
What I want for Red Dead.
Red Dead Nightmare.
That is something I want too, but I want Red Dead 1 in the same game engine as a DLC. So imagine if you get through Red Dead 2, but as a DLC. So you get through Red Dead 2 and it just continues into Red Dead 1. That would be my ideal.
Dude, that would be perfect.
I've thought about that, how it'd be really cool if you had games which instead of operating as a sequel where you're basically resetting, you just had a continued... That's actually one of the reasons why I really enjoy From Software games. They have the New Game Plus function where the second playthrough, you keep all your previous things, but you kind of get to experience the story again and maybe change the story. Because I think, replayability is super important, and having all your progress be completely taken away from you when you play the sequel to what's obviously the same game is really frustrating.
It's also really frustrating when you get to the end of a game and there's like the no turn back moment. It's like, okay, go back and like level up and do everything that you want to do before like the end game. Mm-hmm. And so then you play through the end game and literally there's no New Game Plus after the end. Your only choice is to go back to before the end game started, which like literally makes no sense. And like I had that problem with Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild has that similar thing where it's cool that it has an open world that you can go and explore at your own pace, and you can either go to, the end game like right off the bat, or you can like collect all the Korok seeds for all like 1,000 of them or whatever. You can do that first if you want to, like you can do them in your own pace. The problem is that the end game with Ganon, like there's no New Game Plus. There's no way to like continue Link's story after that. You either have to start a new game entirely, or you can go back to before you fight Ganon, which again,
Fallout New Vegas had the same problem.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the thing is you really want to see what the world's like after what happened.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. Like, they aren't going to have a sequel to it, really.
Yeah.
So you kind of just left there with, like, this ending. and you can't like go further past that. Like you can't continue playing. You have to just always play before the ending.
Interesting.
I always thought Fallout was a cool looking game. Basically, science fiction Skyrim. I thought it was pretty cool looking, and then I realized that it's just science fiction Skyrim. I mean, it's nothing special, nothing interesting, I guess. Or it is, but not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if I had to choose one for each, I'd probably have Lord of the Rings as my movie, Psych for my show, and for my game, it might actually be Portal 2.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Nice.
I kind of return to those occasionally.
Yeah, and the hard thing with this question too is I wouldn't say I necessarily have one for a movie or show, because especially for movies and shows, like I try to experience like new things as opposed to like revisiting current things.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm the same way for games. Like I don't usually, I'm not the type of person to like go through something like again and again if I like it. I might go through something like twice or maybe even like 3 times, but like I try to seek out like new things, because like, even with games that I like a lot, in my mind, I'm always like, maybe there is another game or another movie or another show or whatever out there that I'm going to like more than the thing that I really like. And so I want to find like that other like new thing. The downside of that though, is that I have all these games that like I've started, but I've never finished, cause I just jump around way too much. With movies, a lot of movies that I've only seen once, like, some movies, unless you see them multiple times, like you're not really going to remember them. And so it results in like, I've seen a ton of movies, but like the amount of movies that I actually like remember a lot of like what happens is like actually very, very small. So
Interesting. Yeah. I have a really good memory when it comes to movies, but not so much for reality. No, not so much for like shows. I think with shows, my memory gets really weak. I have basically no recollection. Which is one of the reasons why detective shows can work for me, because if you watch a detective show, then for me the mystery is like still a mystery after the 3rd watching through, because by the time I finish all the seasons, I'm like, what happens in this episode? Yeah. What's the next question?
So I've got a really interesting question that might seem strange to you, especially as like guys, because I don't know, at least for like most dudes, we're not like super emotional like people. So the question is like, what is the most recent thing that made you tear up? And I changed it from what is the most recent thing that made you cry, because I feel like crying is different than tearing up is more of like you feel the emotional impact of a certain thing, and the result of that emotion is like tearing up, not necessarily like crying. But
Yep. I watched a show recently called 91 Days, and it essentially takes place during the Prohibition era. It's an anime. And the main protagonist, he loses his family to this mob, and so he ends up wanting to get vengeance on it. He's made his whole entire life goal trying to get vengeance on this family, and he has this family that's taken him in and kind of raised him almost after his family got murdered. And so he joins his mob and tries to destroy it from within. There's just this scene, which I don't want to spoil too much, but it's with the brother, well, not his real brother, but like the one that was part of the raised up family, that just made me tear up, because it was just like really sad. I can't say more without spoiling the show, and I really don't want to spoil the show.
The only person I've ever met who cares about not spoiling things for like everybody else is like, all right, so everybody remember Endgame? All right, spoilers.
well, you know why I care? Me specifically, I care because a ton of things have been spoiled for me.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I want people to watch those shows, so I have more, so I
That's
can
a good
talk
point.
about it. So if I tell them about it, they're not gonna watch
Yeah,
the
they
show.
don't have to watch it.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of like a tie between two things. I can't remember which one happened more recently, but I know the other day I was listening to this sermon, Pastor Ken Ortiz of Calvary Chapel in Spokane, and he was talking about just the state of our culture. and how corrupt we've become and how evil. And it hit hard, especially the infanticide that's going on a legal and consistent basis. It just hit me really hard that like I'm a part of a country that's doing this, and that made me tear up. But then, unapologetically, I tear up every single time King Theoden comes over the hill in Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. Every single time. No, when the Witch King raises his sword, man. And then like you hear the horns, it's just so good. I love that scene. I could watch that scene all day. So great. What about you, Cameron?
Well, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a movie that I saw recently. Let me see if I can. I think it was Slumdog Millionaire. Have you heard of this movie?
Yeah, I have. That one's really good.
I guess it was just like the combination of his super hard and basically like tragic life, like the juxtaposition of that and like him actually like getting what he wants and like having the good life like that he wants like in the end.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a pretty epic movie, at least to me. I liked it a lot.
I really like it too. Yeah, it's pretty good. Have you seen Lion?
No, actually haven't. I've heard of it.
That one's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not
Dev Patel with beard.
Dev Patel with the beard. Australian Dev Patel.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, he has an Aussie accent. That was pretty good. It wasn't, I think, as good as Slumdog Millionaire, but the child actor who plays for most of the movie is really something else. I don't know how they cast him, how they got that performance out of him, because he's a small child. He's obviously very young, but he is so good. They're so good. And I've worked with a lot of child actors. I've never seen something like him.
Yeah, there's very few child actors that are actually good. But I don't know. I think a lot of like child actors does depend on the directing. So
yeah,
there's that too.
Most actors depend on directing, honestly.
Right, but like kid actors even more so, because while regular actors, they can manufacture certain emotions, kids cannot.
Yeah.
And so they need to have direction to know how to respond to certain things, what the scene, like, what the subtext of the scene is going to be. And, even like coaching, like different ways to bring out different emotions. And if you just tell a kid actor, okay, well, like this is a sad scene, so I need you to like cry. And that's it. You're probably not going to get a very good performance out of that kid actor.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
What's something you're really terrible at but wish that you could do well?
Life.
All right. More specific.
I would say in general, just physical activity. I think running, though. I wish I were much better at running.
What if I told you you could actually get better at that?
Yes. Yes.
Time management, scheduling. Like I'm terrible at that, really. Like I used to have a planner. I didn't really fill out much in that planner, as I probably should have. Wish I was better at that. Pretty terrible at it.
I think understanding people, though, would probably be like my big one. To understanding people, and because oftentimes to help people, you have to understand what they need, and understanding what their need is in of itself something difficult. So sometimes I want to help people, but I can't help them because I honestly don't know what they need. Like I don't know what's the best thing to do for them. So knowing that would help me a lot, because then at least I know what to do.
I would honestly say like handstands or any of like the more like gymnastic type of like flexibility routines or whatever. I wish I was more flexible.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to I'm progressing towards like a freestanding handstand, and like I am trying to be more flexible, but it's just such a slow process, at least for me, that it's really hard to see progress. And so it's like any one of those things where you look at people that are really good at it, and you're like, going from like that to like where I'm at now is such a large distance that it's hard. And especially when the progress is so minimal, like it's hard to see like getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah. Did we talk about this? What's a movie, book, game, or show you wish was wiped from your memory so you could experience it again for the first time? I guess we didn't. One of those things where it's like you experiencing it, kind of like what I talked about, like you experiencing it again. It's not gonna, like, you've already experienced it, so you're not gonna get like that, you know, the satisfaction that you get from like something new. So I guess like this would be more beneficial, I guess, for like, people who like thrive on like new experiences.
Well, for me, you guys would probably expect this because basically most of my conversation revolves around it, which is telling you about its impact on me. But Lord of the Rings was something.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, Lord of the Rings was something which I don't ever remember watching for the first time. Like, I've watched so many bits and pieces before I sat down and watched it all through. It was such a foundation of my childhood, basically, that I never really remember the first time I watched it. Like, I watched it, you know? And so I never had that experience of truly appreciating it and truly getting everything out of it on the first time watching it. I never had the impact. I never felt the impact. I have the appreciation, but not so much the impact. And so I wish I could do that, but there's some other ones too, which are a similar thing. It's a Wonderful Life. I didn't appreciate it until now, and I wish I could watch it again so I could appreciate it, like fully appreciate it.
Cool. Right.
Well, Red Dead Redemption 2. I would love to replay that game without knowing what was happening.
Yeah.
I don't know about the TB.
As for a movie, A Silent Voice. It's on Netflix. It's pretty good. It's another anime, but it deals a lot with like bowling, like like perspective from a bowler. Like, how does someone become that way, and how can misunderstandings and stuff lead into and I really liked that movie. That movie was really good. Wish I could watch it again without knowing what was going to happen, but
Yeah. How about you, Cameron?
Oh boy. I'm just trying to think of like, something that I had a powerful response to. Oh man. I mean, I could name like my favorites from each of those categories, but I don't necessarily know if the first experience was the best experience of that thing. Mm-hmm. Because some things they do, they do require an additional like playthrough or watch for it to like get better. Like, there's a lot of like movies or games where the first time I played them, I didn't particularly like them until I went through them like a second time. So I don't know for those if like the first time would actually benefit me or not. Like Interstellar, I didn't really like it that much the first time I watched it, but like every time like since that, it's just like it's gotten better. So do you have anything?
Yeah, there's a lot of ones. Interstellar. I think Inception is one which I've gotten like I that's the one which I do remember watching for the first time and really enjoying. And then I would love to watch it again. I think I'd get a big kick out of it if I watched it again, not knowing what I know now. Also, this is one thing that came to my mind is, so I've grown up in like a Christian household. Like, I was taught a lot of both theology and the Bible from a kid. And I say a lot, not very much by historical standards, but by cultural standards, a lot. And the way I see it, it would have been nice to have that discovery. Like, I envy people who came to Christ at a later age because they have something which I can't mimic, really. Like, they have that like first discovery, which is something really unique and special. And it's not it's different than what I have. Like, I don't necessarily envy them because I think, oh well, I would like to make a bunch of mistakes in my life and then turn my life around. But rather, that first experience of sitting down with the Bible and not really understanding what it is, but then discovering it would be a really special thing to experience. So that's something which I just thought of myself. I wouldn't want it wiped out from my mind, though. That's not like it has required so much labor to just get it in there. So I don't want it like wiped out.
Oh man, pesky morals. Wish I could just wipe it away.
Pesky ethics. Dang it. Sometimes, isn't that what we do, though? We wipe away the morals until Yeah, until we do what we want to do, and then we realize, well, that was a mistake. Yeah, for a game, I don't know if there's any specific game which I could say it's like, oh, I wish I could wipe it out. Except, okay, Portal 2.
Except Portal 2.
No, Portal 2 is a game which I played like 3 times in a row the first week that I had it. It was so entertaining to me. I just loved the comedy of it, and it has great replayability because you can't remember a lot of the comedy. But that's not something I want to wipe away because the appreciation deepens with every experience, and the first impact wasn't necessarily any better. Except I was so pleasantly surprised. Like I was so surprised about how funny it was, and how good it was. Yeah, for like a game, I can't think of many games where I was like, wow, that first experience was just like boom.
Okay, I thought of one.
Wow.
Witcher 3. So the first time that I played that, I really hadn't played that many games. And so it was like the first time that I was invested in a game that like I owned the game and like the game system. And I put way too many hours into that game. Even just like the first playthrough, just like doing all of the side quests, all, you know, like literally doing everything that like there was to do. I spent way too much time in that. But yeah, it was super unique. And I just remember like sitting down there in the basement, like 3 a.m, and, you know, playing through it and, you know, coming across like there were certain specific parts that I remember very distinctly. Like, you know, the final, like at the end of the main game, the final battle with like the Wild Hunt. There's a part where Ailment Earth has like a super cool like cinematic and following fight scene that I just remember being like, oh, or like, you know, when you're playing as Ciri near the end of the like the main game and you get her, you basically get this ability where you can just like insta kill just like any enemy, and so it's like super like the super frenzied battle where you're literally just like cutting through everyone just like in like one like insta kill per enemy. I just remember just like freaking out, or I don't know. There's a bunch of different memories that I have like of that game. But
I was trying to convince him to play Witcher 3 just right before.
I know there's like some nudity and
Yeah.
language and whatnot, but I honestly think that if you can get past that part of it and just skip those cutscenes, I honestly think that there's a really good, engaging and interesting game beneath that surface. And not to mention, like, the music is great, the storytelling is pretty great. It still holds up really well after being out for like 6 years. Like it honestly rivals like some current games. Obviously not Red Dead 2, because Red Dead 2 is also a masterpiece. But you know, other games that aren't as big, it definitely rivals like current games. I honestly I think it's a masterpiece, and I think you should play it.
Well, I'll think about it. I don't know. It's not something which I really want to get into. There are some things which I want to get into, and it's not.
It also
super
has
high on my
2
list.
DLCs, which are honestly better than the main game. And the 2 DLCs are widely different. One is you're basically hunting a vampire, and I don't think this necessarily spoils it, but at the end of that expansion, there's basically an all-out battle for the realm between vampires and humans, and it's pretty epic. And then the other DLC is more of like it's a story about like morality essentially, but it's about two lovers who basically became immortal, and they basically grew sick of each other to the point where I believe the woman she like curses herself or something, to the point to where she's like in torment, and so he like the dude like comes to for help. But like there's some really fantastic visuals. Like it's not like a dream sequence, but it's similar to a dream sequence where you go inside this painting to find these different items that you need like to help lift like this curse from this woman.
And
it's lit like a Van Gogh painting,
really,
but you're in the painting, and there's some sequences like that. They're like, whoa, I've never seen this before. This is amazing.
In Dark Souls, you jump into a couple paintings. It's like,
oh, really?
Yeah. It's not, you don't have interesting aesthetics. It's just like another world, but it's, yeah.
It's like a Van Gogh painting where like everything looks like it's painted and it's like colorful. It's cool.
And I also like how some of the side quests can actually like affect things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like
like the crones. Yeah. Yeah, and the storytelling is just it's pretty on point. Some of those side quests are really interesting from like a story point of view. Like I think the Bloody Baron's side quest is like one of the best in the game.
Did you play that one where that guy was a werewolf and like
Wild at Heart.
Yeah, and you had to choose like.
So basically, it's a dude who is a werewolf and he's in love with this woman, but there's this other woman that loves him and doesn't want him to be with this other woman. Sort of like the love hate triangle.
Yeah.
And so basically what happens is the woman who is jealous basically lures this other woman that he loves to his lair where he hides out when he's a werewolf, and he accidentally just like murders her because he's a werewolf and he can't help himself. And like it was all a plot by the woman, and so you're hired to basically find out what happened, and then in the end you can either choose to like let him kill the woman who, and he's like at torment because he's like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just like stuff like that where it's like almost
Interesting
fairy
moral
tale-ish,
choices. Yeah.
but like almost kind of like a dark fairy tale where it's like things can either turn out bad or worse.
Yeah.
There are no like good endings.
I wanted to leave and just, but I ended up accidentally choosing the other option, and I ended up having to fight the dude.
Yeah, so,
and then I was like, I have to go back to my latest save, but the save was way too far gone. I was like, I guess this is just the story now.
And then both endings are bad because if you let him kill her, then he's just killed her, and then you have to kill him anyways. And if you don't, if you don't let him kill her, then you still have to kill him. But then
and then she gets walked scot-free.
Well,
essentially,
not only is she scot-free, but she is just like, just like super just sad. And, I mean, think about it. Like she caused the death of like two people, and she's going to be like emotionally scarred with this thing like forever. And you just find her up like in the house, just like weeping. And
so you essentially made out to be like, you don't get a good choice. You're either an accomplice in the murder, or you end up just letting this true killer get away, but also she ends up like super tormented and everyone's just unhappy, and you have another dead person on your hands.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. I can dig it.
And there's a lot of those side quests too. You come across a lot of weird side quests, and they all have very interesting stories to them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like the one where it's this like ogre dude, and he's like in this like underground building, and he basically has this ruse where the villagers think that he's a god, and so he demands that they pay him tribute by like bringing food and like beer and wine and all this kind of stuff to him, and so essentially like you have the choice to, one, you either fight him and kill him because he is deceiving the villagers and just not being, he's basically taking advantage of the villagers, or you can let him go and he continues to take advantage of the villagers. Yeah.
You murder a dude to let him get away.
Right. And if you choose to like leave him be, like you do get a small reward, like a small monetary reward from that. But the villagers are still under this, like they still think that like it's a god. And so it's like, well, do you tell them the truth and kill a monster, or do you not, or you just let them believe their delusion and suffer the consequences? Because what happens is like they contribute to give food to this god, even though their people are like starving. So they're basically giving like food that would be given to the villagers to this like just fat gluttonous being that like doesn't even need it. So
Interesting.
yeah.